Story 1. Sister's lies and manipulation exposed after her wedding. My sister, N29F, has been best friends with Ruby, 30F, for as long as I, 25F, can remember. Growing up, Ruby was like a second big sister to me. One thing that is important to note is that Ruby has always had the most outrageous fashion sense possible. She's the person that would wear those runway outfits that you think no one would actually wear, and got engaged pre-COVID. Almost as soon as it happened, she started being really weird to Ruby. When she made me maid of honor, I was kind of surprised because they've always sworn to be the MOH at each other's weddings. But I am her blood sister, so it wasn't that weird. I was completely blown away when she made a group chat and I found out that Ruby wasn't even a bridesmaid. Both me and my mom tried to talk to her about it since we figured they had an argument or something, but she would only say that Ruby didn't care anyway. I know that Ruby was hurt, but she didn't want any drama, so I agreed to let it go. Throughout the whole wedding process, my mom kept asking and if she would invite Ruby, if she would ask Ruby's opinion, etc., and refused to have any contact with her or talk about anything wedding-related with her whatsoever. On Saturday, my sister was married. She had a beautiful outside, socially distanced wedding, but she was seething the whole time because of Ruby's dress. It wasn't at all outrageous by Ruby's standards, so I don't believe that she wanted to outshine my sister. She wore quite a simple wedding dress, but that was her choice as MOH. I, of course, went to her fitting and that was literally the one she chose, and has been cursing Ruby out and saying that their friendship is over ever since, like she hadn't been ignoring her all through lockdown. Finally, I just said that she's been friends with Ruby most of her life and she knows what she dresses like, and that she should have expected this. If it was that much of a problem, she should have found a way to mention it to her or just made her a bridesmaid. And lost it with me. She sent Ruby some really horrible messages after she screamed at me. She didn't say a word to me all of yesterday, but she's bad-mouthing me to our dad, who was on her side. My mom has told and that she should apologize to Ruby for the nasty messages she sent and for yelling at me. And isn't talking to her either. I don't even know what's going on. But Ruby swears on her life that they didn't have an argument or anything pre-COVID, and says that that's none of my business and I should be supporting my real sister. My dad agrees with her, and she's rallied the other bridesmaids against me. So, I kinda just want to clear some things up. Ruby didn't wear a wedding dress or anything really outrageous. It was a dark red bodycon dress in a satiny material. There were lots of people in form-fitting dresses. The bridesmaids were wearing them, and she didn't look out of place. Edit. Again, some of you people are ridiculous, assuming the absolute worst-case scenario. It wasn't a spaghetti strap dress that just barely covered her, but it was an appropriate length and had long sleeves. If this needs saying twice, the bridesmaids were wearing bodycon dresses, so were many other guests. It wasn't a particularly traditional affair. Nobody was offended by our figures. Ruby's dress didn't massively stick out. Ruby is very attractive. She always has been, but I never thought it was an issue for and before. Ruby and N had been best friends for 25 years. They didn't grow apart or anything. They stayed in constant contact even as adults, and then suddenly wasn't talking to Ruby anymore. My mom and I weren't trying to be controlling. We were worried. We assumed that something really bad had happened for them to cut contact overnight. When N refused to talk about it, my mom was only more worried because she's normally an open book. I don't love Ruby more than N or anything like that. The only reason I'm so close to Ruby is because N used to be so close to Ruby. They were basically inseparable, so I grew up tagging after both of them. Of course, I love N very much. I just think she's being unreasonable in this situation. Ruby was always going to be at the actual wedding. The phrasing was bad on my part, sorry. When my mom was suggesting that and invite Ruby, it was to wedding prep things like dress shopping, etc. I don't know if Dave Groom has feelings for Ruby. I have never thought that. They've met many times and there's never been any signs that he does. I definitely do not think it is an affair because then surely my sister wouldn't want to marry Dave and neither would want Ruby at the wedding at all. Ruby doesn't have a history of going after N's boyfriends or crushes. Update 1. Based on some of the advice I'm receiving, I was going to tell N this morning how much she means to me and that I'm there for her. But she's seething again, so I'm not trying to. Dave asked me if I could talk to, and because they've also apparently had a massive fight because he tried to defend Ruby on the wedding night. He asked me if I could explain where he misstepped and how to make it up to her. This is the first time he's ever asked me for help with their relationship, so he's clearly at a loss. I said I was just as confused and we didn't even know why she wasn't in the bridal party, so he should just try and talk it out with, and this is when it gets weird. Dave said that the reason Ruby wasn't in either wedding party was because he wanted her as a best woman and wanted her as a maid of honor, but wouldn't budge and said that they should just drop her from both parties. To be fair, he said that she explained it to Ruby and that's why they had a fight, because Ruby wanted to be included. I said okay and just hung up, but the more I think about it, the more confused I am. If they had a massive fight about Ruby being maid of honor, surely Ruby would remember? Also, I don't know why Dave would want Ruby as his best woman when, to my understanding, he only met her after he started dating, and I really am taking your advice not to meddle to heart, which is a nightmare because now my curiosity is totally piqued. So I won't bring it up. It's possible that this is all I'll ever know and this will bug me to my grave, but I have made a vow not to push in any more on it. Thank you everyone for your comments. Thank you all the NTA people for reassuring me that I'm not the one acting crazy. Thank you also to all the helpful yes verdicts that helped me see how I could change my behavior in the future to be a more supportive sister. Update 2. I'm even more confused. Dave called me up about 30 minutes ago asking me in a very angry tone of voice if any of his groomsmen behaved inappropriately towards me. I asked what? And he asked again. I could hear and in the background shouting something. I said that they had been perfect gentlemen at the wedding and that I hadn't had any contact with them since. He then asked if Ruby knew that she was meant to be best woman. I said not to my understanding, but it was possible that I don't know, as both she and had been quite secretive about what happened between them and that he'd be better off asking them themselves. He laughed and hung up. Ruby has texted me asking me what's happening and if I knew about the best woman / maid of honor thing. Just now I got a message from one of the bridesmaids saying that if Dave calls me I shouldn't answer him, and is on the phone to my dad screaming, it sounds like. I have no clue what's going on, but I think somewhere in this mess is the truth of what actually happened. Everything seems to be exploding. I now think that the bridesmaids, or at least that particular one, are involved, and if things keep happening at this pace, I think I should eventually find out what in the flying hell is happening. Update 3. There has been a lot of shouting and tears today. Honestly, I'm exhausted, but so many people have commented for the update, so here it is. I'm still kind of in shock, and has been lying to just about everyone. The story is very complicated and long. This list is actually what I used to wrap my own head around it. It's all the facts I have in chronological order. 1. Dave has been to jail and is a drug addict. He met Ruby before he met and after he recovered, he was really struggling with money and Ruby helped him a lot. He considers her to be one of his closest friends. 2. 2 years later, Dave was doing well at his job and much more stable and functional. Around this time, Ruby introduced him to Anne. 3. Anne was very reluctant to have a relationship with Dave because of his past, but she had strong feelings for him. Eventually, they began dating, but she was still ashamed of the person he used to be, so she told us that they met over a dating app. Dave consented to this at the time. 4. As Dave became more comfortable with himself and the relationship became more serious, he told Anne that she needed to be honest with us about his history. She agreed to tell us, but she didn't. She told Dave that she had and wrote a fake letter for my family about how we were really grateful for his honesty and accepted him. She told Ruby that my parents had reacted really badly, so Ruby never brought it up with Dave or my family because she thought it was still a very sensitive topic. 5. When Dave proposed and started freaking out about the wedding, Dave wanted people from his support group to be there, Ruby as his best woman, etc., which would expose the lies. But she still didn't want to tell us who Dave was or Dave that she had lied to him, so she decided to continue lying instead of coming clean. 6. So Anne pretended to be really upset that she couldn't have Ruby as her MOH, so she could make the argument that she should be dropped from both wedding parties. She told Dave that she had explained their decision to Ruby and that Ruby had taken issue with it to keep him happy. In reality, she knew that if Ruby knew she was meant to be best woman, it could easily get back to me and my mom and then raise questions from us about Ruby's relationship with Dave, so she didn't tell Ruby anything at all. And that's why Ruby was so confused about what happened and couldn't think of anything. Told Dave and all of his friends from his support group that they shouldn't mention the addiction in speeches or even casual conversation because it was a sensitive subject for certain family members. Before the wedding, told the bridesmaids so many lies about Ruby. She told them that she had a habit of causing scenes, that she was going to try and sleep with the groomsmen, that one of them was an ex-boyfriend of hers that dumped her, that she would get way too drunk. Essentially, she painted Ruby as a disaster waiting to happen so the bridesmaids wouldn't like her and also so that they could keep her away from certain people, specifically the ones that also knew Dave at the wedding. And also told the bridesmaids that the only reason that Ruby was invited is because I idolize her so they wouldn't repeat any of the lies she told to me. 7. After the wedding, and put on her enormous meltdown about the dress. The bridesmaids obviously didn't have a very positive opinion on Ruby, so they were easy to convince that it was meant as a genuine slight. My dad did what and apparently expected everyone to do by caving immediately because she was the bride. If me and my mom had done the same, and would basically have used it as an excuse to cut Ruby out of everyone's life. 8. She tried to do the same thing with Dave's groomsmen by insisting to him that they had said inappropriate things about the bridesmaids. The idea was to basically remove anybody that knew the truth about Dave from the general social circle so it wouldn't come up again. 9. Dave smelled a rat. He asked what exactly the issue was with Ruby's dress and what exactly his friends had said, and panicked and accused him of not loving her, choosing his friends over her, etc., and it turned into a massive argument. Dave was mad and very suspicious, so he started calling people up trying to figure out what happened. 10. A couple of the bridesmaids said that and was telling the truth about the groomsmen. She asked/pressured them to, but most were kind of weirded out by the request, and I think they successfully got that across to Dave. He called me to ask if I knew what was going on, and told Dave that I was just like him, caring about Ruby more than her, and also that I wasn't there when it happened. But the timing of the story didn't match up, so Dave called me anyway. That was the weird phone call. 11. At this point, he knew she was spouting BS, so he asked her up front what was going on. She broke down and told Dave everything. 12. He was fuming. He texted us all to let us know about his past and then basically kicked and out. She came to us where she then had to explain again everything, and is absolutely shaken. I never considered her capable of this kind of deception and manipulation, and I don't think she has ever done something like this before. Contrary to what some commenters seem to believe, I don't hate my sister. I feel sorry for her, even though I'm really hurt by what she did, because she feels so guilty and absolutely miserable because she's worried that things will never be worked out with Dave. She's gone to bed now very upset because our mom won't even look at her. She's fuming that and would deceive and hurt her and so many other people like this. I do understand where she's coming from. My dad is also very shocked and hurt and texted Ruby and sent her a message explaining and apologizing, but obviously Ruby is really angry and upset. She just told her that she couldn't speak to her right now, but maybe she'd call her in the morning once they both had a chance to calm down. Dave is probably the most hurt out of everyone, and I understand why he wouldn't speak to Anne. But he did tell me that he really thought that he had our acceptance and that the letter she had written to him had been his most treasured possession ever since he received it, and to find out that it was false was absolutely crushing. I told him that we did accept him for who he was and that nobody blamed him, but I don't think it helped much. He has asked for distance from our family, and I understand why. I'm not sure when he'll be willing to speak to and again, or if he wants to be her husband after this. I wouldn't blame him if he goes on to find someone else. Thanks, Reddit. It turned out everyone was way off base, although I don't think anyone could have predicted this. But a lot of the comments were very insightful and gave me food for thought despite everyone kind of looking in the wrong directions. Except the weirdos about the dress, you know who you are. Update 4. The past 2 weeks have been very stressful. And my mom have been fighting and crying for most of it. We learned that this deception of Anne's was not out of the blue. She has had this obsession with her image for a very long time. She confessed to a lot of stuff from secondary school and her job. Some of it was worrying and some of it was really scary and manipulative. I feel so distant from the person she has become. There's tension between us that I'm not sure will ever go away, even though it really pains me as well, because she's my sister. Once my dad heard some of the revelations, he decided that and should go to a therapist. And really struggled against the decision, which led to a massive fight between her and my dad. I've never seen my dad so angry, neither has she, which is probably why she eventually agreed. The therapist is supposed to help and process her emotions after everything that has happened and also hopefully get to the root of her problem. A lot of the comments suggested that our family wasn't healthy in the way we interact with each other. I'm conflicted on this because on one hand, me and my mom were right that something was very wrong, but then that doesn't mean that we didn't behave badly, if that makes sense. So I suggested family therapy. My parents are looking into it. Hopefully we can learn a bit more about boundaries and each other and eventually move on from this. And has been talking a lot to Ruby. From the sounds of it, Ruby is still very upset, but I've been taking the advice not to meddle so much in their relationship and I'm leaving them to it. Me and Ruby still speak a lot, but not about and Dave sent a message 2 days ago that I think has sadly resolved this very terrible situation. After learning that this is part of a pattern of behavior, he doesn't think that he wants to be in a marriage with and at all, as he feels that she hasn't only hurt him deeply, but deceived him about the type of person she is. I know from Ruby that he is also seeking therapy and has confided in friends about what happened, so he has a strong support system around him. I'm not getting involved with him other than that, as I think he deserves distance from my family after everything, but knowing he's okay does make me feel a little better, and has taken this news badly. When she first got the message, I think she had a panic attack. She was breathing really quickly and shaking and crying. She knows that Dave learned about her past from Ruby and is absolutely furious with Ruby for telling him. She is just as preoccupied with the thought of being someone divorced as she is with the fact that Dave is leaving her. I really hope that the therapist helps her get better, and although I'm not taking it as hard as my mom, I do feel guilty for not noticing this sooner, because she's just not well. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Mill hated me and humiliated me at her birthday party, so my hubby and I cut her off financially. But she did this. My mother-in-law, Sharon, has never liked me. I have no idea why. I guess nobody is really good enough for her darling son. She did not like the fact that, in spite of her clear disapproval of me, my husband still chose to be with me. We have been together for 3 years, and 1 year ago we got married. Initially, my husband and I really tried to get her to like me, but she was always too high and mighty to care. She treated me like dirt, and most of the time when I would visit, she would pretend like I was not even there, or else she would act like I was completely unwanted. The only reason my husband and I would even visit her before we got married was because my father-in-law was very sick, but he was a good man. So, in order to spend time with him before he passed away, we would try to visit as frequently as we could. Unfortunately, my husband lost his father 3 months after we got married, but he had been sick for a long time, so we were just glad that he was able to watch his son get married before he went away. After his demise, we also reduced our visits to Sharon significantly. It had been made very clear to us that she did not approve of our relationship, and even on the day of our marriage, all she did was sulk about it. So, if she didn't like me, we were going to make sure that we stayed away from her. My husband still stayed in touch with his mother but did not visit her as much as he used to. The reason he stayed in contact with her was because his father had left everything to him and only the house to his mother, so it was his responsibility to fund his mom. He would send her money monthly since she had been a stay-at-home mother for the majority of her life and only her husband had worked. She didn't have any money of her own. She was completely relying on my father-in-law. After his passing, she would have to rely on my husband to maintain her lifestyle. However, my husband did not want her to know that his father had left no money for her, so in order to spare her feelings, he told her that his father had left instructions that all the money was to be directed to his son, but on the condition that he would have to take care of his mother, even though there was no such condition. Before you guys ask, we don't really know why my father-in-law did not leave any money to his wife apart from the house. From what we knew, they tolerated each other when they were together. I wouldn't call it a happy marriage, especially at the point when I got to know them, but they were together, and I guess there was no reason for him not to leave anything to her. Anyway, after my father-in-law passed away, it was my husband who had been taking care of his mother because even though we did not share a good relationship, I did not feel comfortable, and neither did he feel good about cutting her off entirely and leaving her on her own. So while we reduced our visits to her house significantly, he still continued to take care of her, and I feel like that in itself should have made her feel a bit grateful towards her son. Unfortunately, I don't think it had that effect. Last week, my husband was out on a business trip, and out of the blue, I received an invitation to Sharon's birthday party. That was really surprising because so far, I have never received any invitations to any of her events. It's always been an invitation to my husband saying that he is allowed to bring a +1, just to make it clear that she doesn't even acknowledge my status as his wife. But this time, the invitation was addressed to me in particular. I was very confused, so I spoke to my husband about it first, and he told me that he had received an invitation as well, but he had received that much earlier, and it was clear that my mother-in-law was inviting me as a second thought. He told me that he had made it very clear to Sharon that he would not be able to make it to the party because he had a work trip that was more important, but if I wanted to go, I would be free to attend. Before that, he suggested that I should speak to Sharon on the phone and ask what this is all about because it's really confusing. So, I took his advice and I called Sharon, and I asked her about the invitation, and she told me that she was inviting me to make amends. She said that she was well aware of the fact that she hadn't exactly treated me well in the past, but she wanted to fix that because she knew that we were together for the long run, and if my husband really loved me, then she wanted to be respectful of that and wanted to give me a real chance. I was very skeptical about attending because so far, the kind of relationship that we had, it hadn't exactly been pleasant to deal with her. But on the phone, she told me that she was really sorry about the way she had behaved with me. She had spoken to a couple of her friends and had come to the conclusion that she really needed to step up as a mother and as a mother-in-law and do better. So, this was her way of trying to make it up to me by extending an invitation to her birthday party and asking me to attend so we could bond. I know I really shouldn't have gone or fallen for her act, but I felt like she was being genuine, so I decided to attend. It was a terrible decision that I really regret now. Anyway, the next evening, I got dressed and I went to the party. I expected to be greeted personally by Sharon, but to my surprise, she had hired a doorman for her party. Right in front of me, he went through the guest list and told me that my name was not on the list. I was really confused, so I even opened the invitation to the party on my phone and showed it to him, but to my surprise, he told me that what I had received was not even the actual invitation, and he told me that somebody must have tricked me. That should have been my sign to go home, but I was genuinely willing to give Sharon a chance. So I just stood there and I called her up and told her what was going on. She then came out a couple of minutes later with a bunch of her friends, and I thought that she was going to tell the doorman that I was a last-minute addition and invite me in. But instead of doing that, she started yelling at the security staff to throw me out and said that she didn't even know who I was. Her group of friends who were standing behind her were struggling to control their giggles, so I knew that this was pre-planned. But Sharon took her role very seriously, and she started shouting about how she did not want any gatecrashers at her exclusive party, and it was only meant for her close family and friends. Since I was literally nobody, she made a couple of really hurtful comments about how she can't just allow any sort of filth to enter her house. I walked back to my car in tears before the security staff had to intervene. I didn't even say anything that day, mostly because I couldn't bring myself to do it since I was crying so hard. I drove a couple of miles away from the house before completely breaking down inside my car and calling my husband up to tell him what had just happened. He heard me out patiently and consoled me, even promising me that he would cut his business trip short to come back home earlier than he planned so he could be there for me because this had obviously been a very humiliating experience for me. I could tell that he was very upset with Sharon, but he did not let his anger come through while he was talking to me and just focused entirely on comforting me. So I literally had no idea what was about to happen the next day. Anyway, I came back home that day and I blocked Sharon everywhere that I could possibly think of, and promised myself that I would never ever speak to her again or even give her a chance to speak to me. The first thing that I did the next day was speak to my husband on the phone, and he told me that he was coming back the day after. But while I was on the phone, somebody showed up outside my door, and they were shrieking their head off. When I went to check, I was really not surprised to find Sharon out there because I had expected her to show up at some point, but I did not know what she was screaming about until I heard her out. I realized that she was telling me that she was going to take us both to court and make sure that we paid up. I had no idea what she was talking about, but luckily my husband was on the phone, and when I asked him, he told me that the night before, he had sent a message to her. In the message that he had sent to his mother, He had said that he was going to cut off her funds now because if she couldn't respect him or his wife, she had no business taking money from us. He told her the truth that her husband had not left her anything and all the money that my father-in-law had, it went to him. But I guess she hadn't yet put two and two together and she still thought that her husband had left instructions for her son to take care of her for the rest of her life. And that's why she had shown up at my door screaming about how she was going to take us both to court and make sure that she got the money she was owed. After speaking to my husband, he told me to just call the cops, and that's what I did. I called the cops and had her escorted off the property but did not press charges against her. I was very pleased with the situation because the way she had treated me was unacceptable, and I was glad that she was getting her karma for it. She had humiliated me, and now she was going to have to look out for herself because as far as I knew, she did not have any money and had been expecting her husband to leave her something. At the time, I did not think there was anything wrong with what we were doing, and even when my husband returned, we were fine with our decision to cut off her funds and make sure she stayed out of our lives. But then 2 days back, she sent us both an email saying that she was really sorry for what she had done. But she needed our help to survive because she literally did not have anything and she was counting on the kindness of her children, referring to both my husband and I. I could tell that she was trying to butter us up, and it did not seem very sincere. But now that I think about it, there is nobody to take care of her unless we do. And yet, I don't really feel like telling my husband to get back in touch with her or anything. We haven't even spoken about it yet, so I don't know what he feels. But I have been having a lot of mixed emotions on this topic. Update 1. Hi, so first things first, I have received a lot of comments calling me stupid and stuff for wanting to give my mother-in-law a chance. I would just like to defend myself and say that I had genuinely and truly wanted to believe that maybe she was sincere about wanting to make amends with me. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has an ego, and she is definitely not the first mother-in-law in the world to treat her daughter-in-law badly, but I have heard of people who have corrected their behavior, and I thought that it would be the right thing to give her one chance at the very least, which is why I went to her party. And I do regret it now, but I don't think that I did anything wrong. I was the victim in the situation, not the perpetrator, so I don't think it's fair to hate on me for being somebody who likes to give second chances. That's just who I am as a person, and I'm not stupid or gullible. I'm just a normal human being. Besides, I had spoken to her on the phone before attending the party, and she had sounded very sincere, so the act that she had put on was so good that I literally felt like I did not have any reason to doubt her intentions. I feel like we have to give her some credit as well since she manipulated me quite well. Me attending her party and wanting to give her a second chance shows the kind of person that I am, and her taking advantage of my decision and humiliating me shows the kind of person that she is. That's the end of it. Anyway, I don't want to talk more about that. I just wanted to defend myself before more people started sending me hate. I have discussed it with my husband, and while both of us regret whatever happened at the party, we are just glad that it brought out her true colors and we know what kind of a person she is now. Not that there was any doubt about it earlier. She was still terrible, but now it's just more obvious. We also spoke about the email that she had sent both of us and realized that both of us had been feeling equally guilty after it. But after talking it through, we realized that the only reason she was reaching out to us was not because she was sorry but because she needed money to maintain the kind of lifestyle that she had so far. So she could pretend that we were her children all that she wanted. But the truth of the situation was that she did not have anyone else to count on, and we were basically just her meal ticket. We pretty much stopped feeling guilty after we realized that even though she did not have any money that had been left to her by my father-in-law, she definitely had some money. We spoke to the lawyer who had been the executor of my father-in-law's will. While he did not tell us why exactly no amount of money had been left to my mother-in-law, he did tell us that she did have a certain amount of money in her bank account that her husband had transferred to her before he passed away. And if she was really struggling, she had a bunch of really valuable stuff that she had purchased, and she could always just sell it. Worst comes to worst, she could approach her family for money and ask them to take care of her. The bottom line was it was not necessary for us to keep funding her even after she was so disrespectful towards us, because it wasn't like she couldn't survive without us. She just didn't want to because she did not want to spend her own money. That's how she had been her entire life. She wanted to portray herself as a helpless damsel in distress so that my husband and I would take pity on her and keep sending her money even if she continued to treat us like crap. For a while, she had us fooled and had completely manipulated us into feeling guilty for her. but we were not going to allow her to manipulate us again. She is a bit of a master when it comes to that, but we are also aware of her tricks, and now it's going to be very difficult to fool us. It has been 1 week since she sent us that email, and we haven't responded to her yet. Neither are we going to. We are going to continue to ignore her because we don't want anything to do with her. If she stops living such an extravagant lifestyle and living beyond her means, she is going to be able to make it work with whatever money she has right now. We are not going to take pity on her and help her out anymore because she had lied to us about being helpless in the first place. Honestly, I just feel relieved that I don't have to deal with her anymore because it had been very difficult for me to maintain the balance between hating her and still somehow dealing with the fact that she was going to be a part of my life through my husband. But now that he is done with her, I'm feeling a lot better about things. He was never a mama's boy to begin with, let me just make that clear. But like any other son, he wanted to be able to take care of his parents, and that's why he had stayed in touch with her. Unfortunately, it's very obvious now that Sharon does not deserve it. She could have had a very easy life if she just tried to play nice with me. But what can I say? Some people are just not clever enough and let their egos get in the way of what's good for them. Update 2. Hi, so it has been 2 weeks since Sharon sent us both that email, and after that, she did not contact us for a really long time. Yesterday, though, while my husband and I were having dinner, she showed up at our house once again. I was about to call the cops again, but this time she was not yelling at us. Instead, after ringing the doorbell and making herself known, she just started crying at our doorstep. At that point, both my husband and I were really confused about what to do because this could be another one of her tricks to manipulate us into feeling bad for her and guilt-tripping us into continuing to support her. But on the other hand, she was sobbing on our doorstep, and I think anyone in our place would have felt just as bad. So, after a brief discussion with each other, my husband and I decided that we were not going to open the door, but we were going to try and be gentle with her because calling the cops on her while she was in this state would not be a good move. We spoke to her through the intercom and told her that we were willing to give her some time to pull herself together and leave, but if she did not take that opportunity, we would be forced to call the cops, and we really didn't want to do that a second time. So now it was up to her what she wanted. She replied saying that she did not want any money from us. She just wanted to say that she was really sorry. She knew that this apology was coming a little too late, but now that she did not have anybody, she had realized how important it was for her to have her family around her. And she couldn't exactly fill that void in her life with extravagant parties and time with her friends because even her friends had families of their own who loved them and spent time with them. So even if we did not want to send her money, the least she could do was at least visit her sometimes because she really missed us and mostly her son. We did not know what to say, so we just stayed quiet, and she continued to talk. After we did not respond, she said that she was also apologetic for the fact that she hadn't been completely honest with us. She hadn't told us that her husband had indeed given her some money before he passed away. But to be fair, we haven't been entirely honest with her either. She brought up the fact that just to spare her feelings, her son hadn't told her that her husband had left her absolutely no amount of money. In a way, it was fair, but she felt like both of them had lied to each other and let each other down, and that needed to stop if we were going to be a healthy and happy family. So she wanted to be truthful with both of us and said that a reason she did that awful thing on the day of her birthday to me was that all her life she had believed that no woman would ever be good enough for her son. She hadn't approved of me because I was too outspoken, too bold, and too ambitious, which I guess is true, but I really don't understand how that was supposed to be a problem in our marriage. But anyway, that's the reason why Sharon had never approved of me, and when she realized that her approval did not mean anything anymore since my husband was head over heels for me, that made her resent me even more. She said that she had had to sacrifice a lot when she was married to her husband, and they were never in a happy marriage, but she was content with him. Somewhere or the other, deep down, she had started imposing the same burden of expectations onto me, and when I did not try to live up to those expectations, she started hating me. She hated the fact that her son loved me so much, which meant that she had serious issues, but she was willing to work through them so she could maintain a relationship with us because she did not want to lose the only family she had. I thought that was pretty raw and real of her, but we are still wary of her. So after some silence, I told her that we would think about what we wanted to do, but for now we just wanted some peace and quiet to mull this over. After that, she left, and before leaving, she apologized to us for one last time. Right now, both my husband and I are very confused and have no idea what to do. So we are here, Any sort of advice on what to do will be really appreciated because we are completely lost. We really don't want to get manipulated into anything again, but we also don't want to be heartless. Honestly, neither of us has any clue what to believe anymore, and I guess out of all the things that she said, she was definitely right about the fact that my husband's family had to stop lying to each other and keeping secrets. Update 3. It's very ironic that in my last update I had said that my husband's family needed to stop keeping secrets from each other, and in this update, I'm still going to be standing by that statement because what we have uncovered is so serious. So apparently, the reason my father-in-law's lawyer had been refusing to tell us the reason why my father-in-law had not left Sharon any money was because he had been given explicit instructions not to tell us the truth. However, that was not really official or formal. It had just come from father-in-law as a friend, so since there was no binding document, he was free to tell us the truth, and since we kept pestering him, he was forced to. I don't know why I just had a gut feeling that getting to know the truth about this situation would unravel a lot of things, and I was right. Apparently, the money that Sharon supposedly had was not something that her husband had left her, but it was her affair partner. She had been having an affair with one of her friends from college who used to be smitten with her back then and still was. Sharon had never spoken about it while the guy she was having an affair with was still alive, but 3 years ago, around the time that my husband and I had started dating, she lost him to a heart attack. He did not have any family of his own, so he had left everything to her. My father-in-law found out about it much later when Sharon finally told him the truth a couple of months before he passed away. At that point in time, there was not much that he could do, and he knew that he was dying, so filing for a divorce would be pointless. So he decided the only way he could get back at her for this was not to leave anything to her apart from the house and leave all his assets to his son instead. He left the house to her on purpose so she wouldn't suspect anything and wouldn't try to contest the will after he was gone. We also found out that whatever Sharon had said to us about having to sacrifice a lot while she was married to her husband, that had also been a load of BS. My father-in-law had given her the option to work after she got married and gave birth to my husband, but she was the one who said that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. The only thing she had sacrificed in her entire life was dignity because throughout her life she always got somebody else to carry her weight. Anyway, now that we know the truth, we also know that she was putting on an act the day that she came to our house to tell us that she really missed us. I'm glad that we did not bother to reach out to her after that because that would mean that we got manipulated once again, and we would feel pretty stupid if that happened. She's a liar, cheater, and an overall terrible human being, and the farther we stay away from her, the better it is for us. Update 4. Hi. So Sharon tried to contact us again. Even though it has been 1 month since we last spoke. I guess it has to do something with the fact that I recently announced my pregnancy on social media, but she pretended not to know about it in her email. She said that she was really looking forward to hearing from us because she thought that it had been enough time since we last spoke, and by now we should have been able to come to a decision about what we wanted for the future. And she was right, it didn't really take us long to come to a decision about what we wanted, and what we wanted was for her to stay away. So we sent her a message telling her that we knew everything about her affair and stuff, and we did not want anything to do with her anymore. We told her that if she was all on her own right now, it was because she deserved it. She had never valued anybody in her life, and the only person that she genuinely cared about was herself. So she should be grateful that right now she gets to spend time with the only person she loves. Herself. If she runs short on money, she can always find another man to have an affair with and rely on him instead. But for now, her son is done with her. It was a really harsh message, but it had to be said because she has bothered us enough, and now that we are embarking on a new chapter of our life, we need our peace, and we need her to stay the heck away from us. I'm pretty sure that this message is not going to deter her, and she's definitely going to try again in a couple of months when I'm in the later stages of my pregnancy. But my husband and I have already spoken about that possibility and decided that if she bothers us anymore, we are going to just file a restraining order against her and hope for the best. We are also planning on moving out of this house into a new one, and we're going to make sure that nobody gives out the address to her because with a baby on the way, we need a bigger space anyway. I'm just looking forward to being a mother, and I can't wait to start afresh. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I raised my ex-wife's affair baby as my own daughter for 13 years, but now my dad wants to cut her out of his will because she's not a real grandchild of his, despite actually loving her. 45M. When my daughter, 13F, was born, I immediately felt that something was obviously amiss. She was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, which was extremely unlikely for a child of myself and my ex-wife, 39F. I am very Mediterranean and I have olive skin, dark eyes, and dark hair. My ex-wife has brown eyes and relatively dark brown hair. Her skin is barely lighter than mine. The baby also clearly bore no resemblance to me or anyone in my family at all. I had been having misgivings about my ex too, and she seemed too quick to express surprise and make excuses. Still, though, I didn't want to throw away my marriage over what could have been my own misunderstanding of genetics, and so I signed the birth certificate. I instantly knew that I was going to have a paternity test done, but something else surprised me. When I brought our little girl home, I still fell in love with her. It felt just like bringing my son, 14M, home, and looking at her. I still just saw her as an innocent, beautiful little baby. We bonded. The paternity test came back negative as I suspected it would, and I decided that our marriage was over. I still loved our little girl, though. My then wife did everything that she could to drag out the divorce and refused to separate or move out. My daughter's biological father, every bit as blonde and blue-eyed as I suspected, turned out to want nothing to do with her or my ex. He was already married with his own family, and his only focus was preventing the situation from blowing back on himself too much. My ex went totally nuts when both she and her affair partner rejected her, and she made some very unfortunate decisions. To make a long story short, she ended up with prison time for crimes including identity theft, assault with a deadly weapon, and grand theft auto, when she stole credit cards and forged documents for both of us, and when she stole her affair partner's car and tried to run him over with it. I ended up with custody of our kids, with the affair partner never even attempting to establish any kind of paternity rights. I didn't want to press the issue myself, as I couldn't deny that I had bonded with this child, even knowing that she wasn't my real daughter. I had been shunning my ex-wife as best I could and trying to move on with life after she was finally out of the house. It wasn't long before I got together with and married my current wife, 34F. And we've since had another 2 children, 10M, 8F. My eldest daughter is a total daddy's girl, and we have a wonderful relationship. She always feels loved, and I treat her the same as my other kids, even though she obviously stands out. My family accepts her too, or at least that's what I thought. I work for my father's company, and the other day we were out talking about the future and his will, and he was talking about what money/assets etc. he wanted to leave to whom, including his grandchildren, and I noticed that my older daughter had been left out. I mentioned it to him, and he said, "It's nice what you've done for daughter's name, but you have real children and obviously they should come first." I interrupted him and I told him that she is my real daughter and that I thought she should be treated equally. He just paused and looked at me for a moment and he said, "I guess you feel how you feel," before he noticed I was still about to argue with him, and he shrugged and moved the conversation onto things about work and my siblings. I was too polite to try to force the matter at the time, but it sort of stuck with me. My father isn't the type of man to harp on a point, and I am certain that he's content to have said his piece and would let the matter drop. He could certainly tell that what he said upset me, and so I doubt he'd bring it up again. Frankly, he sort of raised me the same way. At the time, I was shocked because he's always seemed to accept my daughter as a part of the family. He buys her gifts for her birthday and for Christmas, and he makes her feel welcome. But thinking about it, he really is just a kind, polite, and generous man. In a lot of ways, he will and has bought Christmas gifts for high school friends or significant others if he knew they were coming, and the same for other gift-giving occasions. He's generally very hospitable to anyone his friends or family bring around, so I thought that maybe it was just that, and I misinterpreted. My wife is Asian, and so my eldest daughter always stands out. She's thin and blonde and blue-eyed, unlike pretty much anyone else in my family, and she's taller than any of the other girls or even most of the women, really. So I'm aware that she might look like the neighbor kid visiting or something. My wife loves her, and I know that she 100% accepts her as one of our kids, and she has been a great mom/stepmom. I talk to my own mother, though, and while she's definitely closer to my daughter than my father is, they interact a lot more and she includes my daughter with the other kids/other girls in family traditions and activities. I got a little bit of the same vibe from her. She was much more diplomatic, but it seems like she may also sort of consider my daughter to be sort of a guest/unfortunate orphan I'm hosting or something like that. She pointed out that I can make my own will however I want. My daughter knows that she isn't biologically mine. That would have been hard to hide even if we'd really had the opportunity. She doesn't want anything to do with either of her bio parents, though. She's seen her bio dad perhaps a handful of times in her entire life, and I don't even think he can remember her middle name. He seems to have pretty successfully kept his family together and his wife from leaving him, but he definitely doesn't want any involvement. My ex-wife continued to spiral for a long while, and she lives in another state with another man and her own new family. At this point, she mercifully rarely makes contact. I've never really tried to go after either of them for money. I don't need it, and it's not a pot I want to stir. My siblings are mostly supportive, if a little bit mixed on the issue. Some of them say that they could never raise the child of a partner's affair, but all of them say that they love and accept their niece. I just can't get over the way that I feel distant and upset about what my father said. Though, he's an extremely kind and generous man, and he's always taken care of his family. He's given me opportunities and a lifestyle that I could never have achieved without him. I love him and I look up to him. Maybe that's why I feel sort of, betrayed. It feels wrong that she's the only one of his grandchildren to be left out of his will, apparently because he doesn't consider her a real grandchild. Intellectually, I can accept that he's technically correct, but it feels wrong. She is my daughter. Am I wrong, though? Am I just being entitled and unreasonable here? Am I the a-hole? Now for some comments. Comment 1. I get why members of your family might consider you foolish for raising the result of your ex-wife's affair. But honestly, it speaks well of your character that you treat her as your own. I wonder if your parents would be similarly non-accepting if you had adopted a child, because practically that is what happened. I wish you and your family the best. Comment 2. I think OP should ask his parents that, if I had adopted a child, would you feel this way about that child? Okay, because that's what I did. I put my name on her birth certificate and raised her knowing she wasn't biologically mine. I adopted her and she's my daughter. Comment 3. I agree, and TBH, she was born into your family and you have claimed her as your own child, same as if you'd adopted her or brought her into the world through birth. That's very important to me, and TBH, anybody that didn't want to accept that and wanted to treat the child differently from my other kids would not be someone I would want spending much time with any of my kids. NTA. I think you are an amazing dad. Comment 4. My stepmother did this for me, although I wasn't an affair child. My father died when I was 15, and my birth mother spent most of her life institutionalized for mental health concerns. My stepmother, like you, was a saint. You will probably never really fully know the good you have done. Comment 5. No, you're a goddamn saint. Problem is you're thinking other people will be saints too, and they're not. Their reactions are understandable, but it makes me sad for her when she eventually learns the truth of how they see her. Update. Just a small update. Thanks for the comments and wishes. It really put a lot of things into perspective, and it confirmed to me that I needed to say something. Some people seem surprised at the way I let my daughter's bio parents off the hook, so to speak. The main reason I've never tried to go after my ex or her affair partner for child support is that my daughter is more important than money. I'm not struggling at all, and I have the support I need. More importantly, though, I have my daughter. Even though the affair partner didn't apparently want anything to do with her, my lawyer did mention way back in the day that either he or my wife, being her biological parents, could have a strong case for seeking custody. I know I'm biased, but her bio dad seems like a huge a-hole, and I know he doesn't care about her. I wouldn't put it past him to try to get custody just to duck out of paying child support, though, if his hand was forced, and the idea of her having to go stay with him is just something I don't even want to think about. Kind of the same thing when her mom got out of prison. She seemed like she was very quick to go shack up with her new guy, and she seemed willing to let the matter lie, so I did the same. The fact that neither of them tried to get her, or in my ex's case, the way she hasn't even bothered to keep much contact with our son either, tells me more than everything I need to know about the kind of parents they are/would be. They only seem interested in their pre-existing/new families respectively. I wouldn't want to try to back them into trying to take custody. With my daughter being 13, it's possible that we've sort of run out the clock on that matter. but it's still not drama we need or a risk worth taking. In better and more important news, though, I talked with my dad. I met with my father for lunch, which was easy enough as he's around most days and we could sync up some time. I mentioned that I wanted to talk about my daughter not being in his will, and I told him that even if it meant dividing what was being left to me or my other kids, I felt it was really important for her to be included. I also mentioned, as I felt and as a lot of people pointed out, that it would be devastating for her to find out that she'd been excluded after his death. My father agreed that that was a really good point, and he said that she is a lovely girl, that he does love her, and that he wouldn't want to add extra pain or bitterness to her life, especially at such a time. Also, it had gotten around to him that I'd been sort of polling my siblings a little bit, and I think my mom talked to him some, and he said, "This is obviously very important to you. You're my son. I can just change it. It's not so much money anyway." And he was right. The amounts of money being left to individual grandchildren aren't massive, but the gesture and the thought are what's most meaningful. Mostly everything is going to my mom and or us kids anyway. Really, there was no reason for me to expect him to have been stubborn or hard-hearted about any of this. It was just something that we needed to talk about. My father reiterated that everyone loves my daughter and that she'll always be family and always have a home. He has a gold bracelet that he has worn somewhat occasionally over the years, and he mentioned that my daughter thought it was pretty when she was very little. She noticed it on his wrist and said that jewelry was for girls. He laughed and explained to her that sometimes boys wear jewelry too. She thought it was nice, and he let her try it on, even though it was way too big for her wrist. She was a little toddler then. I didn't know about that moment between them, and I thought it was really sweet that he remembered. He said that he was going to leave her the bracelet and a note, and that as far as money goes, she'd get the same share as the rest of my kids. So we had a nice lunch, and we both felt better for it. Nothing too dramatic, but really the best way things could have gone. Thanks everyone for confirming that I wasn't being crazy and confirming that I needed to talk to my father and set things right. Now for some comments. Comment 1. This is a happy update. Your father is a good man and he raised you to be a wonderful man. Comment 2. I love a story of good people being good people. Thank you. It's sad that there have to be such shitty ones to make the good ones stand out, but I guess we have to take that with life. I hope OP and his family have a wonderful one. Comment 3. Let's be real, OP didn't have to step up, but thank goodness he did because he's doing right by all his kids, whether bio or not. His side of the family needs to understand that his adopted daughter may have came to him under shitty circumstances, but that doesn't change the basic fact that they all know that OP sees her as his real daughter and they need to respect that. I hope his side of family continue to have that epiphany before they find themselves on outs with him and all his kids. Comment 4. OP adopted his daughter, but more importantly, his daughter has an actual blood sibling with her older brother. A family of kids with a mix of 4 different parents. They are all interconnected, even if some aren't directly blood related. They are a family and OP actually understands that. He is an incredible father and his kids will grow up to be good people. Comment 5. I was there for the original posts and was infuriated. Your adopted child is your child. Full stop. No qualifiers. Your child's child is your grandchild. Full stop. No qualifiers. OP's father partially got it, but it sounds like mainly for OP's sake, not his granddaughter's. Comment 6. Sometimes that's all we can ask for. By another name, and it's much preferable to him sticking to his original plan. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Boyfriend proposed, I said no, now my family hates me. My boyfriend, Van, 33M, and I, 24F, had been dating for the past 3 years. We met over Bumble, and after going out on a few dates, we knew we had stumbled upon something extraordinary. Despite the significant age gap, our connection felt effortless. We bonded over our love for travel and adventure. From the very beginning of our relationship, I always made it very clear to Van that I was not ready to settle down anytime soon. I cherished our adventures and the freedom to explore life without the commitment of marriage. Van always seemed understanding, assuring me that he valued our relationship and was in no rush for anything more. 3 months ago, Van and I attended his friend's wedding. I met some of his college friends, and amidst the celebration, a few of them playfully teased us, wondering why we weren't married yet. I chuckled nervously, brushing off the question with a shy smile. After returning from the wedding, Van's behavior took an unexpected turn. He began flooding me with social media posts that emphasized the importance of women getting married and having children before the age of 30. Initially, I found it a bit peculiar but didn't think much of it. However, his behavior escalated. He started asking his sister if we could babysit her kids on the weekends. Being a working professional, weekends were my time to unwind and enjoy some relaxation. Initially, I didn't mind having the kids over occasionally, but it soon became a regular occurrence, and I began feeling uneasy about the whole situation. What annoyed me the most was how he would volunteer to babysit his sister's kids without even consulting me. I would make plans, even securing reservations for us to go out during the weekend, only for him to cancel them, citing the need to watch his sister's kids because she needed a break. I began to suspect that he was doing this intentionally, perhaps in his weird little way to prepare me for the future. What irked me even more was that every time we babysat those kids, I ended up being the one looking after them while Van remained glued to the TV with them for the entire day. The situation not only disrupted my plans to relax but also left me feeling like I was shouldering the majority of the responsibility during these babysitting sessions. When I realized that he wasn't going to stop the charade, I started to make plans to hang out with my friends without him. This really seemed to piss him off. He insisted that, as a woman, I should be looking after the kids and leave him alone with them. I told him that he was the one who was inviting them over every time without asking me. Hence, they were completely his responsibility. He started to protest if this was how I was going to treat our children one day. I was shocked to hear such a disgusting comment from him out of nowhere. I angrily reminded him that his sister's kids were not mine to look after, so he couldn't force me to babysit them when all he did was drink beer and burp on the couch. I went on to tell him that I was neither looking to settle down nor was I looking to have children anytime soon. He later apologized to me for how he had spoken to me, and I thought he had finally learned his lessons. Over the next few weeks, he didn't bring up the matter, and we had a few great dates. Then, out of nowhere, when we were out on a date, I caught him staring at a family sitting nearby. He then turned to look at me and started to talk about how my biological clock was ticking already and we should get pregnant as soon as we can. His words started to scare me as I realized he was no longer playing around. Despite me saying I wasn't ready, it seemed like Van wasn't listening. He was getting more and more obsessed with the idea of getting married. The pressure was getting too much, and I knew I had to talk about it before it messed up our relationship. One evening, after spending the day preparing a grand meal for us, I decided to have a more open conversation regarding this so I could understand where he was coming from. As we sat down to eat, the aroma of the food couldn't mask the tension that lingered in the air. I took a deep breath, gathered my thoughts, and finally broached the subject. I looked at Van, my fork pausing midair, and said, "Van, we need to talk about something important." His eyes met mine, and I could sense a mix of anticipation and unease. I began by expressing my feelings about marriage and how, at this point in my life, being just 24 years old, I wasn't ready for such a commitment. I explained that I valued our relationship immensely but needed time to grow individually before taking such a significant step. I told him that I did not want to be married for at least the next 4 years. Van, however, seemed taken aback. He tried to convince me with tales of happily married couples, the joy of raising children, and the security that a marriage could offer. His arguments were heartfelt, but I knew that they didn't align with the priorities I had set for myself. As he continued to make his case, I stood my ground, emphasizing my desire for personal growth. I made it clear that I was not ready for marriage, let alone getting pregnant at such a young age. It became a challenging conversation, with both of us expressing our perspectives passionately. Despite Van's attempts to sway my opinion, I remained firm in my stance. I explained that rushing into marriage wouldn't be fair to either of us and might jeopardize the very relationship we cherished. Hearing his continuous argument and feeling the weight of our differences, I took a deep breath and told Van that if my reluctance to marry were a deal breaker for him, perhaps it would be best for us to part ways. I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. Van began to protest vehemently, his earlier conviction momentarily wavering. He backtracked, assuring me that our relationship meant more to him than any societal expectations or predefined timelines. He claimed that he just needed time to adjust his own perspective. He assured me that he would respect my choices from now on and give our relationship the space it needed to thrive. Although I wasn't fully convinced, I discerned the sincerity in his eyes. His reassurances held a promise that he had grasped the essence of my feelings and that the topic of marriage wouldn't loom over us like a storm cloud any longer. With a reluctant yet hopeful nod, I agreed, thinking that I would not have to worry about this again. After our serious chat, things chilled out. Van stopped bugging me about getting hitched, and we got back to our cool, adventure-filled groove. We continued to hike, explore, and enjoy life without any pressure. Felt like we had found our sweet spot again. My sister's birthday was coming up in a few weeks. I was delighted to be flying back home and meeting my family after a long time. In the days leading up to her birthday, I noticed that Van spent an unusual time on his phone. He would act a bit out every time I walked into the room, and it made me wonder what was going on. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but the uneasy feeling lingered like a storm brewing on the horizon. I couldn't shake the thought that something was going on with him. When we flew back to my hometown for my sister's birthday, Van's behavior became even more perplexing. He seemed overly invested in the preparations for her upcoming party, constantly checking his phone and excusing himself for mysterious calls. On the day of her birthday party, I was thoroughly enjoying myself. I was catching up with my family, chatting with friends, savoring the delicious food, and soaking in the festive atmosphere. Laughter and music filled the air, creating a joyous backdrop to the celebration. Amidst the lively chatter and celebration, Van decided to call everyone's attention by clinking his glass. His voice cut through the mirth, and a hush fell over the crowd as all eyes turned toward him. I felt a knot form in my stomach, a sense of unease settling in as I tried to comprehend what he was trying to do. Van began talking about how his life had changed since the day he met me. He smiled and started describing how he never thought he would settle down until he met me. I was bewildered and confused about what he was doing. He walked up to me and suddenly got down on one knee. I gasped in shock as my family and friends erupted in a chorus of encouragement, cheering him on as he took out a ring. He continued to say how he couldn't wait to spend the rest of his life with me and eventually start a family. Van's eyes held a mixture of anticipation and hope as he continued to hold out the ring, awaiting my response. I was so shocked seeing what he had just done. He knew very well how much I didn't want to get married, but there he was, a shiny ring in hand, asking me to say yes in front of everyone. In that charged moment, I grappled with conflicting emotions. The festive celebration had taken an unexpected turn, and I found myself standing at the center of attention. Panic set in. I looked around at all the familiar faces. My mother looked like I had just won the lottery. My sister smiled at me, mouthing for me to say yes to Van, and all my cousins were giggling. I felt like a deer caught in headlights. My boyfriend had this hopeful look in his eyes, like he just aced a math test and was waiting for a high five. In the midst of my internal freak out, I shook my head. I can't, I finally uttered, the weight of those two words hanging in the air. Van's hopeful expression faltered, replaced by a mix of sadness and confusion. His disappointment was palpable, and I could sense a tinge of embarrassment. In the silence that followed, my family members exchanged glances, their initial enthusiasm replaced by a hesitant awareness of the unfolding scene. Van stood up slowly, the glimmer of the ring now dimmed. He attempted a strange smile, attempting to downplay the rejection. The atmosphere, once vibrant, now carried an awkward tension. I felt a mix of emotions: regret for causing discomfort and anger towards Van for putting me through this publicly. I announced to everyone that I needed to talk to Van in private. Frustration gripped me as I led him inside, away from the prying eyes of the guests, into the backyard. As soon as the door closed behind us, I erupted in anger. I couldn't believe the audacity he had to pull a public proposal to pressure me into saying yes when he clearly knew that I wasn't looking to settle down anytime soon. Hearing my words, tears welled up in his eyes. His voice quivered as he expressed how I had shattered his dreams, claiming that proposing was the ultimate expression of his love, and any other woman would have been excited to say yes to him. I angrily retorted that he should then go and propose to someone else because I can't be with him anymore. The scene quickly escalated, with Van's tears turning into audible sobs. He started to accuse me that I had led him on all these years, playing with his emotions. I reminded him about our past conversation and how I never signed up for this emotional roller coaster, so I didn't understand how I was suddenly the bad guy. The commotion caught the attention of my sister and mother, who rushed in with concern etched on their faces. Seeing his tear-stricken face, they started to implore me to reconsider his proposal, highlighting how it was time for me to grow up and settle down. I couldn't believe how my own family could force me to get married when I had already clearly expressed that I was not ready. My sister told me that I had no right to embarrass Van in front of everyone. I looked around and saw some of my friends giving me sympathetic glances, thinking I was crushing my poor Van's dreams. Overwhelmed by the embarrassment and the persistent opposition from my family, I couldn't bear the weight of the situation. I quietly walked out of the party, leaving Van to continue his emotional display in front of everyone. Since the incident, the atmosphere at home remains charged. Van, overwhelmed by embarrassment and the aftermath of his heartfelt proposal gone awry, decided to fly back alone. I was a bit relieved as I knew that we needed space at this moment. Even though he is gone, the awkwardness continues to linger, with my family questioning my decision and attempting to sway me toward reconsidering his proposal. Despite sticking to my guns about not wanting to get hitched, I find myself grappling with guilt. The image of Van's sad face keeps replaying in my mind. Did I break his heart? Maybe, but at least I didn't break my own in the process. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for rejecting my boyfriend's proposal after clearly letting him know that I was not interested in marriage? Update 1. In the aftermath since I wrote this story, a lot has happened in my family. My sister, Donna, and I have had a fighting match regarding what happened between me and Van. She revealed how Van had confided in her about his elaborate plan to propose, and she had known about this for weeks. In her mind, she believed it would be a wonderful surprise for her birthday celebration. The disappointment on her face was evident as she expressed how my rejection and my selfish nature had cast a shadow over what should have been otherwise a joyous occasion for everyone to celebrate. My mother tried to keep the peace between us, but I couldn't take my sister's accusations anymore. Amidst our heated exchange, I finally confessed to them that Van and I have had multiple conversations about marriage. I emphasized that I had consistently communicated my reluctance to tie the knot so soon. Hearing this, my sister's expression shifted from anger to a mix of frustration and confusion. She asked me to elaborate more, and I told her how I had communicated my priorities to Van clearly, and Van had promised me that he would not be pressuring me to get married anymore. I asked her if Van had told her about our conversation, and she shook her head no. It was clear that my sister had been unaware that I had expressed my feelings to Van long before he decided to publicly propose to me. Donna then questioned me. Why would Van purposefully propose to me if he knew that I wasn't going to get married? I explained to her that despite our conversations, Van somehow might have thought that a grand gesture would somehow change my mind. It was as if he believed the public nature of the proposal could override the doubts I had expressed about settling down so soon. My dad, who was hearing our conversation, decided to speak up at this moment. He generally doesn't like to interfere in family matters and detests being around any drama. I braced myself, thinking that he was going to reprimand me also, like my sister was. But to my surprise, my dad told Donna to leave me alone. No one should feel forced into marriage, he remarked, his tone reflecting a stern yet understanding demeanor. If Van truly cared about her, he would not have pressured her so publicly. Love should grow naturally, not be coerced with grand gestures and unnecessary drama. His words resonated in the room, causing a brief pause in the conversation. Donna, visibly conflicted, seemed to absorb the gravity of my dad's perspective. I couldn't help but feel a mix of gratitude and bewilderment towards my dad for having my back. Despite my sister temporarily shelving the conversation, there's an underlying skepticism lingering in the air. As for Van, he has been calling me nonstop after flying back home. I thought we could take a bit of space from each other, but he has been constantly texting how much he loves me and misses me. He has sent me paragraph after paragraph about how he can't imagine spending the rest of his life with anyone except me. It's starting to make me feel suffocated. I have loved Van all these years, but his refusal to accept my boundaries is making me question our relationship. I will update you once I fly back home and confront him. Update 2. Thank you for everyone's overwhelming support and interest in my story. To start with, when I returned back to the city, I didn't immediately go back home, as I knew Van would be waiting for me. His constant calls and heartfelt messages had overwhelmed me, and I didn't have the energy to confront him. I decided to stay at a nearby hotel for a few days while I went to work. Despite my initial resolve to address the situation calmly, his relentless pursuit became overwhelming. 2 weeks later, I decided it was time for a face-to-face confrontation. I invited Van out for lunch, and he was excited to see me after so long. As I met him, the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. His eyes pleaded for reconciliation, but I knew deep down that our paths had diverged irreversibly. In a quiet corner of the restaurant, we laid bare our feelings. I recounted how the public proposal, despite his good intentions, had become an unforgivable moment. I conveyed the embarrassment and discomfort that lingered in the aftermath, emphasizing the strain it had put on relationships within my family. His eyes mirrored a mix of regret and realization. Hearing my words, he then started to protest, insisting that everyone would forget about this incident once we got married. I sighed in exasperation, looking him in the eyes, and firmly conveyed that I didn't want to be with him anymore. His eyes grew wide in shock as I continued to explain that I didn't want to be married to someone who would knowingly force me into a corner publicly. I stressed the importance of respecting each other's boundaries and choices, emphasizing that genuine love should be considerate and patient. He started to profess his love again, narrating how he wanted to grow old with me, yet I stood firm, reiterating that we clearly wanted different things in life and I was not going to change myself for him. Emotions ran high, tears flowed, and Van continued to plead. I empathized with his heartbreak but stood resolute, unwilling to compromise my own priorities. His initial shock started to turn into resentment, and his frustration began bubbling to the surface. He began to accuse me of holding him back, even using derogatory words like gold digger. He argued that all his friends were settling down, building families, and here he was trying to convince me to get married. He told me how he was the best thing to ever happen to me and I was a foolish girl if I decided to let him go. His words were laced with so much bitterness and desperation that I couldn't help but laugh, which stopped him mid-track. His claim of being the best thing to ever happen to me struck me as ironic, considering the emotional turmoil his grand proposal had caused me the last few weeks. I told him that I had been feeling guilty a few days ago for rejecting his proposal, but watching his reaction had solidified the fact that I was right not to marry him. Van, caught off guard by my response, seemed momentarily lost for words. I could see the realization dawning on him, even if reluctantly, that I was not going to listen to his demands. With a heavy sigh, I wished him luck for his future and told him to not bother me ever again. I also let him know that I would be coming by the next day to pick up my things from our place so I could officially move out. Van reluctantly agreed, a mix of resentment and acceptance etched on his face. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but feel proud of myself for standing up for what I wanted. It wasn't about relishing in his disappointment. Instead, it was the importance of standing up for what I truly wanted, even if it meant disappointing someone else. Update 3. It's been about 4 months since I broke up with Van. My life has been going surprisingly well. After our breakup, I moved out from his place into a flat where I lived with a great roommate. It has been a bit daunting to adjust to a new space, but the clarity of newfound independence offered a glimmer of hope. It felt like shedding a weight I didn't realize I was carrying while dating Van. In the days that followed, I faced my fair share of questions and raised eyebrows from my family. My sister, Donna, initially struggled to accept the situation, still holding on to the notion that I had let go of something good. Aware of the lingering concerns, I decided to invite Donna to visit me at my new place. The intention was to spend some one-on-one time with her, giving us the chance to have a heartfelt conversation without the prying ears of our family members. When she visited me, we could finally talk about everything. I started by acknowledging her concerns, understanding that my decisions might have seemed sudden and unexpected to everyone, as I had been with Van for a long time. I wanted to reassure her that my breakup with him wasn't about rejecting a good thing but about recognizing what truly made me happy. We delved into the dynamics of my relationship with Van, the pressures that had been building, and how his grand proposal had become the tipping point that eventually forced me to break up with him. Donna, with a mix of curiosity and concern, asked about my emotional state during and after the breakup. I explained the relief that came with shedding the expectations that didn't align with my desires. We shared a few laughs about the awkwardness of the proposal incident, finding some humor in the chaos. The conversation then shifted to the positive changes in my life post-breakup. I highlighted the freedom I had now to make decisions in my life without the constant worry and pressure of what my partner would want, and how I had been rediscovering myself. Donna listened, starting to understand my perspective. In the end, she assured me that if this was something that made me happy, then she didn't want to stand in my way. I felt relieved hearing her words. Our talk then transitioned from the heavy topics to more light-hearted banter. Over the course of her stay with me, we had a great time, and I took her around the city for sightseeing. Since my sister's visit, my mother has also started to see that I have been doing much better without Van. She has apologized to me over time for judging me that day and has assured me that I have the autonomy to decide when and if I ever want to get married. She emphasized that my happiness and well-being were her primary concerns and she would stand by my decision no matter what. Life has taken a turn for the better. The weekends are now mine to relax and enjoy without the stress of babysitting or unexpected marital discussions. I have rekindled old hobbies, taken spontaneous trips with strangers, and found solace in the simplicity of being true to myself. As I reflect on these 4 months, I can't help but smile at the progress I have made. The breakup, once a source of guilt, has now become a pivotal point in my journey of self-discovery. I am forging ahead, embracing life on my terms, and relishing the freedom to grow at my own pace. My life isn't perfect, but it's filled with moments of contentment, laughter, and the simple joy of being free to write my own story. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Sister and mom attempted to sabotage my wedding to my husband by claiming that my jealous sister was pregnant with his child and she deserved to marry him. Hi guys. So, I'm in a bit of trouble with my mother and sister right now because of something that took place 2 days back, and I have received a lot of unexpected flack for it. I just need some reassurance that I'm not the bad guy here because I feel like people are messing with my head right now. I have not had any contact with the two of them for the past 4 years, after my father passed away. Even when I was younger, my mother always had a favorite, and it was my sister. Once I graduated high school and moved out for college, I never saw the point of trying to maintain a relationship with them because both my mother and sister had always been very mean to me growing up. The only time I would go back home was when I wanted to meet my dad. After he passed away from cardiac arrest, I didn't have any reason to stay in touch with my mom or my sister anymore, so I cut them out of my life. It was a good riddance for me, and I can't say that they were any worse off for it either. About a year after that, I started dating my now fiancé, and after 3 years of dating, we got engaged a few months back. We didn't announce the engagement until a few weeks ago, but as soon as we did, my mom and my sister reached out to me, and I know exactly why they did that. The truth is that they are jealous because my fiancé happens to be the CFO of his dad's company, which owns an extremely successful IT firm. My fiancé is going to inherit the company once his father retires, and regardless of that, I'm still marrying into a pretty affluent family. This has never made a difference to me since I love my fiancé for who he is, not for his money, but I can't say the same for my sister. A couple of days after we announced our engagement on social media and sent out the invitations to our wedding, my mother and my sister came out of nowhere and sent me an email saying that we needed to meet urgently. I was too busy, so I just invited them over to our place, and thankfully, they showed up at a time when both my fiancé and I were at home. This incident took place several weeks ago, and when they had reached out to me, I thought that they were going to apologize for their past behavior and try to make things right with me now that I was marrying into a rich family, so they obviously wanted me on their side. Instead, when they showed up, they started blackmailing us and told us that my sister was currently pregnant and she had good reason to believe that she was pregnant with my fiancé's child, and if I didn't step aside and allow her to marry him, she would expose him to the world. I instantly knew that it was a load of BS, and she was definitely not pregnant with his baby. I was even doubting whether she was pregnant at all in the first place until my mother showed me some reports. She wasn't showing yet, but she was quite a few weeks pregnant, but she had no proof that the baby belonged to my fiancé, and she refused to get a paternity test. So, I told her that she could lie all she wanted, but that was not going to change the truth, and I knew for a fact that my fiancé had always been faithful to me. I wasn't scared because I knew that he hadn't done anything, but then my mom and my sister told me that it didn't matter if the baby was actually his or not. They only needed to imply that something like this was going on. If they posted about it on social media, the word of the scandal would spread like wildfire, and it would ruin our reputation. So, that made me realize that even if they did not have any proof, it would not be difficult for them to come up with fake screenshots and stuff. If they posted it on social media, people would definitely run with it before even verifying how real any of it was, and whether we liked it or not, it would definitely impact his family's reputation since people love scandals and rumors like this. But at the time, my fiancé didn't care, and he was just furious that they had been trying to blackmail him. So he started shouting at them to get out of our house and got them to leave. Only I knew that it wasn't over just because they had left. Since after she went away, my sister sent me another email saying that I still had time to change my fiancé's mind and make him see sense because it would take a whole trial to prove anything, and that was enough time for them to drag his reputation through the mud. I was not scared. I knew that she had nothing on us, and this was just a desperate attempt to get attention or maybe money, but I also did not want her to post anything. So, I told my fiancé to cool down for a bit because I had a much better idea to deal with, rather than taking this to court and going public with it. After some discussion, I got him to agree that he would not contact his lawyer and we would deal with things my way because this was my mother and sister that we were talking about, and I wanted to do more damage than just take them to court. If we did that, they were bound to go public, and eventually, I knew that we would have to come to an out-of-court settlement because my father-in-law wouldn't want this to go on for too long since something like this was going to get media attention, and negative publicity for the company is not something that would go down well with him, so he would try to get over it as quickly as he could. I explained all of this to my fiancé, and eventually he understood what I was getting at. If we wanted to teach them a lesson, we had much better ways to do it without putting our reputation at stake. I had figured out that if she was genuinely pregnant, then there had to be somebody who had actually gotten her pregnant. So, the only thing that I had to do was track this person down. It took me a few weeks, and I had to dig a lot deeper than I thought I would have to since this had been quite a well-kept secret, but eventually, I was able to find out who the real father of the baby was, and I'll get to that soon enough. All I had to do was hold my mother and my sister off for those few weeks and buy myself and my fiancé some time so I could plan something big. I was really mad that even after 4 years of no contact, they were still coming after me for no reason, but I had figured out that they only wanted to take my place because they were desperate for money. I had asked around and learned that my mom and my sister had been living quite extravagantly for the past couple of years and had managed to quickly burn through most of the money that my father had left for them. My sister had even developed a gambling addiction 2 years ago, and because of that, they had had to sell our house and move into a small apartment. So, naturally, it made sense why they were so jealous of me and wanted to blackmail me so I would pay them off to keep them quiet because obviously, I was not going to allow her to take my place in the wedding since that was just absurd. I guess they didn't think things through, and so I was able to find out the truth, and then I decided to invite all her friends and a couple of our family members to an event that I hosted 2 days back for the big reveal. Her plan had been to humiliate me and my fiancé and try to ruin our reputation so she would get what she wanted. And now it was my turn to give her a taste of her own medicine. I had emailed her a couple of days back telling her that if what she was saying was true, then I didn't want to get married to this guy anyway, and I had decided that she was going to take my place in the wedding. Obviously, she couldn't believe it because she hadn't expected me to agree, and she called me up after that to talk me out of it, telling me that she would accept child support until her baby turned 18, but I didn't actually have to give up my relationship with my fiancé because she knew that we loved each other and she was willing to stay away. But I told her that I had already sent her a wedding gown, and she was going to show up at my wedding because she deserved this. She couldn't even talk her way out of it because then she would have to admit the truth that she had been bluffing about the baby being my fiancé, and then her entire plan would fall through. So, she agreed, probably because she thought that it was a win-win situation since she was getting to marry a rich guy anyway, and she was going to be well taken care of anyway. Whatever her reasons were, She showed up at the event that I hosted 2 days back. It was really difficult to find a venue on such short notice, but thanks to my fiancé's connections, I was able to find something, and I didn't bother with catering and decorations and stuff because I didn't think that it would be necessary for what I was planning. My sister showed up with my mom in the wedding dress that I had sent her, and she looked quite surprised to see both me and my fiancé there along with a bunch of her friends and relatives who looked very confused. I hadn't told anyone the reason I had invited them, just that it was important for them to be there, and most of them showed up. When my sister finally turned up, I brought her up to the stage that had been set up and started telling everyone how this situation had taken place. People looked shocked when they realized exactly what was going on, and I could feel my sister trying to free herself so she could make a run for it, but I held on tight and I did not let her go. I continued to speak and explain everything, and then when the time was right, I invited my special guest to take his place on the stage, and he gladly did so. Now I guess I can finally tell you guys who the actual baby daddy is, and you guys can laugh along exactly how everyone at the so-called fake wedding ended up doing. It was my sister's 56-year-old ex-boss from the company that she was employed in previously, but ended up quitting because people had started treating her with hostility when they realized that she was hooking up with their married boss. She had quit just a couple of weeks back, but had decided to keep the baby when she discovered that she was pregnant since she was blackmailing her boss as well. She had told him that he needed to sign a contract and pay child support and she would keep her mouth shut about everything. But if he didn't, she would tell everyone the truth and that would put his job in jeopardy. Out of fear of losing his job, he had agreed, and he had also agreed partly because he was in love with her and was ready to leave his wife for her. He had even told her about it, and she had promised him that she would think about it, but right now she could only think about the pregnancy. However, when I found out who the father of the baby was and I approached him to tell him the truth, he was very disappointed and readily agreed to be a part of my plan to humiliate her. After we explained everything to the guests over there, they all started laughing at her because this had really backfired, and I guess people found it hilarious. Then I finally let go of her because I'm pretty sure she had been feeling like an idiot in that wedding dress, standing beside my fiancé in his shorts. She should have guessed this was not a wedding that was going to take place and made a run for it in the beginning itself, but she was too stupid to figure out what was going on. Anyway, once she was gone, most of the people cleared out since they realized that this was something that I had just put together to humiliate my sister and teach her a lesson, and some of them even came up to congratulate me because nobody should feel like they can try and do something like this and get away with it. I was pretty impressed with myself because I had managed to pull something like this off and taught her a lesson without allowing her to drag my fiancé's family's reputation through the mud. I mean, even if she had tried something like that, we could have sued her, but now I'm pretty sure she isn't even going to have the audacity to do that. I had been feeling happy about it, but after my plan was successful, I told a couple of my friends about it, and they told me that I had taken things way too far and that I should have just taken things to court and let the law deal with it. My fiancé and I are very confused because we thought that what we did was quite clever, and we dodged going to court and stuff because of reasons that I had already mentioned earlier. But now my friends are distancing themselves from me and are calling me manipulative and cunning, and it feels really hurtful because I wouldn't have done something like this if my sister had been a good person. But she was desperate and crazy, and she deserved what was coming to her. I guess people are overlooking that and just trying to paint me to be the villain for no reason. Or maybe I'm actually the bad guy here. I'm really not sure. So, am I the asshole for coming up with a plan to humiliate my sister on purpose? Update 1. Since I originally posted here after I told my friends and they started pushing me away because of my behavior, a lot of the people in the comments told me that what I did was very scorched earth of me, but it wasn't as bad as they were trying to make it out to be. So, I had been feeling fine with what I had done and was trying not to think about it too much because even though people here thought that there was nothing wrong with it, my friends still didn't agree. At least my fiancé was on my side here, and that was what made everything easier to deal with. But after what I found out a couple of hours ago, both my fiancé and I have been feeling incredibly guilty, and we don't know what to do about it. So, a couple of hours ago, I received a bunch of messages from an unknown number, which we figured out was my mom, saying that my sister was in the hospital right now because of what had happened. Apparently, after we threw her that fake party and humiliated her in front of all her friends and so many members of her family, everyone started cutting her off and lost all respect for her, which she should have seen coming. But the way that we dealt with the situation made it all the more difficult for her. She had been miserable ever since she returned home that day and hadn't stopped crying, which isn't surprising. But unfortunately, she decided to do something very risky and went out drinking by herself last night. She had told my mother that she was just going out for a walk, but she went out to a bar on the other side of the town and got absolutely wasted, and then tried to drive herself home. That resulted in her skidding off the road while driving back home, and she crashed into a tree and sustained serious injuries. This is really bad because she's pregnant right now, and I'm really hoping that she doesn't lose the baby. No matter what happens, if that ends up taking place, I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself, and neither will my fiancé. At this point, we don't even care what our friends think or what people in Reddit think. We just don't want something like this on our conscience, and I don't think anybody in our place would disagree with what we are saying. Everything has already happened. It's not like we can go back in time and fix what we did. But the least we can do is at least pray and hope for the best, because we really don't want anything serious to happen to her. Even though what she did was wrong, nobody deserves this, and I am going to stand by that. We found out just a couple of hours ago, and we haven't responded to the text yet, but we might go and see her in the hospital if we think it's appropriate. Update 2. So, like I had said, my fiancé and I decided to go see my sister in the hospital. It's almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon right now, and we left for the hospital at noon. When we got there, I got to see my mother, and she was really stressed out. She wasn't happy to see me at all, which I don't blame her for, and she instantly told me to go away. But I told her that she couldn't exactly blame me for what had happened because she and her daughter were the ones who had come up with a crazy and stupid plan, and it would have been much easier to just ask me for the money. She told me that she had tried to stop my sister, but she got pretty upset and reckless when she found out who I was engaged to because they were having such a hard time with money themselves. She thought that it was unfair, and that's when she came up with this ridiculous plan to blackmail me and my fiancé, and no matter how much my mother warned her against it, she just went ahead with it, and so my mom had to be there for her. I stood my ground and I told my mom that I was not going to apologize for that stunt to humiliate her, since what she had been planning to put me and my fiancé through was much worse than what we had done. And even though we had shown up for my sister, it was out of concern and was definitely not supposed to be taken as an apology. We were not sorry for anything that we had done, but we were definitely sorry for what was happening to her. She was the one who had made a bunch of bad decisions, one after the other, enabled by our mother, and unfortunately, she was now going to have to face the consequences of it. My mom did not even argue with me when I told her all of this, and she just seemed to give up. My sister had regained consciousness by the time that we had shown up, but she was in a lot of pain and had a serious concussion because of the accident, so we had to wait for a couple of minutes before we could be allowed to see her. At first, I really didn't think that she was going to agree to meet me after everything that happened, but I was surprised when she accepted, and the nurse came by to take us with her. When I saw her, she was in a pretty bad state, and I don't even want to talk about it because it was traumatizing for me to see her that way as well. Thankfully, though, we got to know that her baby was safe and sound since it was mostly just her face, neck, and shoulders that had taken the worst of the accident. For now, at least, they did not have anything to worry about with regards to the pregnancy. It was quite awkward for me to see her when I walked in, and I really didn't know what I was going to say to her. But she was the one who started the conversation and told me that whatever was happening to her was well-deserved. She sounded really unhappy, but nevertheless, she still apologized to me and told me that it was just difficult for her to accept that I was doing so well in life because she had always assumed that she would be living the kind of life that I had right now. But instead, she was pregnant, single, and unemployed, and to top it off, she was also going broke. She told me that she had been miserable for the past couple of weeks, and that's what had led to her being so reckless and playing fast and loose with pretty much everything that was going on in her life. I'm not going to lie, I did feel bad for her, but I didn't know what to say to her, so I just let her talk. She kept venting about how everything was horrible for her and how jealous she was of me, and then she eventually just said that the fact that I had come to see her made it even more difficult for her because she knew she was wrong and deserved all of this, and yet I was being the bigger person and showing up for her when she did not deserve even a bit of my empathy. I thought she was about to cry, so I told her that I knew that things would never be fine between us, but I really did feel bad for her. I wanted to tell her that it would be fine, but I don't know that for sure, so I thought that it would be better to just say nothing. Instead, I said that she needed to hang in there and try to make her life better instead of blackmailing people and manipulating them because all these things were dishonest and illegal, and maybe this was just her karma catching up to her. She didn't say much after that, just quietly shut her eyes and told us that she wanted to go to sleep. So we left. Before leaving, I gave my mother some cash even though I didn't need to do that for them, but I felt like I wanted to. I don't know what's going to happen with them, but I really hope that nothing terrible happens. I'm not the kind of person to wish that on anybody, not even my mom or my sister, not even after what they have done. Update 3. Hi, so it's been 5 days since I visited my sister in the hospital, and my fiancé and I are just a week and a half away from the wedding. A real wedding, just to be clear. So far, only our friends knew about what we had done with my sister and everything. We hadn't told his family about it because we didn't want them stressing out about any of this. But today, we thought that it was finally time to let them know since a lot of our friends have now declined to come to the wedding, and obviously, his parents would ask the reason for that on the day of the wedding when they realized that so many of our friends were missing. So, we thought that we would get that out of the way today. We invited them over for lunch, explained everything to them, and we thought that they were going to be mad at how we dealt with the situation because it was quite juvenile and risky. But they told us that we had done what we must have thought it through, and if our reasons were that we didn't want things to go to court and risk our family's reputation, then they had no complaints because at least our heart was in the right place. Besides, even if I had a personal vendetta against my sister and I wanted to mess her up, it was still not wrong because that's what she was doing to me. In fact, it was the exact thing that she had tried to do to me, but unfortunately it had backfired on her. So, I had nothing to feel sorry about, and if my friends couldn't see that, that was their loss. They should probably be happy that I saved my sister from having to spend a fortune on lawyers and stuff. In this way, she can just avoid it all. After discussing it all with them, we realized that they were cool with whatever had happened, and then we went on to tell them what had been going on with my sister recently with the accident and stuff. My mother reached out to me yesterday and told me that my sister had been discharged from the hospital 2 days back, and she was back home now. She thanked me for the money and told me that she was grateful that I had even shown up in spite of everything that had happened. I had been thinking about sending some more money to them since I could totally afford it and I knew that they needed it, so I asked my in-laws about it, and they told me that it was a fantastic idea because I had already taught them their lesson, and just because they were terrible people didn't mean that I would have to stoop down to their level. If I feel better after having helped them out, then I should totally go for it without thinking about what other people would say. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to send some more money to them, and I really hope that she gets better soon enough, but I'm not going to have any contact with them because that's not something I want for myself. I'll give them the support that they need from afar. I think that's what's best for us right now. Update 4. Hi everyone, so I understand that not everybody agrees with my decision to support my mom and my sister, even though I haven't exactly said that I'm going to make things right with them again. Most people believe that I should just let them be on their own and not help them at all, but that's not who I am as a person. I really wish I could be that cold and heartless, but that's not me. Believe me, had it been me, I wouldn't even have visited my sister when she was in the hospital because I wouldn't have cared, and I guess that would have solved a lot of problems for me in the past anyway. This is who I am, and I've already made up my mind, so I'm going to do what I want to do, and I just hope that people realize there is a world beyond revenge, and in the real world, everything is not black and white. I'm not saying that people have to agree with my decision, but I just hope that you guys respect it and don't call me names for it. Anyway, even if you do, that's your call, and I can't exactly do anything to prevent it. But like I said, I had been sending money to my mother, and recently we had a discussion, and she told me that my sister was going to start looking for jobs as soon as possible, preferably ones where she could work from home, and then they would start paying me back as soon as they had a steady income. I was fine with that, and once again they apologized to me and thanked me for everything that I was doing for them, and they told me that they would love to repair the relationship because they really were sorry about everything. I told them that I would think about it. I haven't exactly made a decision yet because I've been busy with my wedding. So yeah, we got married, and my fiancé and I have never been happier. It's just been 2 days, but I already feel like a new person, and calling him my husband makes me feel giddy with joy. Both of us were really happy, and even though a lot of our friends did not attend, at least my best friend and his closest friends were there, and that's all that we needed. We're going off on our honeymoon in a couple of days, and that's all that's on our mind right now. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Father-in-law demanded me $4,000 every month. Pushed me down the stairs, thought I would stay quiet, but I shocked them with lawyers. You want $3,000 more after I already give you $4,000 every month? I said that, trembling, seconds before my father-in-law tried to destroy me. Like a king giving an order, He folded his arms across his chest and leaned back in his recliner. "I need a new car," he said in a matter-of-fact, clipped voice. "The old one's falling apart. I don't see what the big deal is. You've got the money." My chest constricted. "The big deal, Noah, is that I've already sacrificed enough for this household. I cover the bills, the groceries, your utilities. I even helped pay off Adam's credit cards. Now you want me to buy you a car?" "Yes," he said, raising his voice. "Because I deserve it. I've done enough for this family. It's time for you to pull your weight. Do my share." I felt like I was slapped by the words. For years, I had been providing for this family by working nonstop, while my father-in-law and my husband, Adam, regarded my paycheck as if it were a bottomless ATM. And now Noah dared to accuse me of being selfish the one time I established a boundary. "I'm not doing it," I firmly stated, refusing to back down. "You'll have to figure out another way." The vein in his forehead bulged as his face contorted with anger. "You're just like your mother, always thinking you're better than everyone else." His movements were aggressive and sharp, and he stood up suddenly. "Don't you dare disrespect me in my own house." "Your house," I retorted, trembling. "This house is paid for with my money, Noah." He sprang forward and shoved me with both hands. Before I could respond, I was tumbling down the stairs. My feet slipped on the hardwood floor. My body ached and the world became hazy, my head thumping from the impact. My arm twisted beneath me. I landed hard at the bottom. I was immobile for a moment. Tears stung my eyes as I struggled to breathe, and the pain was unbearable. Noah was standing at the top of the stairs above me, his face still twisted in rage. Then he spit out, "That's what happens when you don't respect me," and strode back into the living room. I thought Adam would come running over to help me up, or at the very least check on me. However, he looked blank, almost bored, when he reached the top of the stairs. He shrugged and remarked, "Maya, you should have just given him the money. You know how he gets." My name is Maya, and I have been the breadwinner of a disrespectful household for the last 4 years. I believed that Adam and I were creating a life together, so I married him. However, it soon became evident that his father, Noah, was the center of his priorities. I agreed to move in with Noah to help out when his health started to deteriorate. I was unaware that helping out meant paying for everything, including Noah's personal expenses, food, utilities, and rent. I initially believed it to be transient. Even though Adam and Noah didn't always express it, I told myself that they valued what I was doing. However, their sense of entitlement increased over time. Adam said he had to be at home to help his father, so he completely quit working. Noah, on the other hand, started to demand more and more, acting as though my paycheck was his own. I stayed, though. It was for the family's benefit, I told myself. But as I lay bruised and aching at the bottom of those stairs, I came to terms with the reality. There was no family here. It was a one-sided arrangement in which my worth was determined only by my contributions. And I was finished. That evening, I prepared a bag, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and resolve. I gathered my belongings and left the room without saying anything to Adam or Noah. The pain of their treachery is still very much present. I knew I couldn't stay, but I wasn't sure where I was heading. I grabbed my phone and sat on the edge of the bed after checking into a motel. The weight of what had just transpired was bearing down on me. However, I refused to let it break me. I had been their rock and their safety net for years. They wouldn't be the same without me, and I wasn't going to catch them this time. The following morning, I called. "Angela," I said when the attorney responded. "I need your help. It's about my husband and his father." It felt like the first time I had breathed fresh air in years. When I met my lawyer, Angela, I told her everything, including how Noah had insisted on more money for a car, how I had been paying for all household expenses, and how the argument had ended with me at the bottom of the stairs. She listened intently. Then Angela raised an eyebrow and said, "You've been financially supporting your husband and father-in-law entirely on your own?" I gave a nod. "For the past 4 years, every bill, every expense, everything comes out of my pocket." Looking through her notes, she questioned, "And your name is on the mortgage or deed of the house?" I stated, "It's all in my name, in a firm tone. They couldn't qualify for the loan without me. I pay for it. I own it. A tiny smile of knowing curled Angela's lips. Then this is your house, Maya, not theirs. We'll start with eviction papers for both of them. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and guilt when I considered evicting Adam and Noah. I had persuaded myself that I was acting morally for years by putting their needs ahead of my own. However, that night on the stairs, I came to the realization that loyalty and kindness were meaningless to those who viewed me as nothing more than a tool. I said, "What about Noah pushing me? He could have seriously hurt me." Angela stated resolutely, "We'll include that in the lawsuit. You're not just evicting them. You're holding them accountable for their behavior. Let's make sure you get justice." The weeks that followed were filled with preparation. Angela assisted me in obtaining all the documentation I required to bolster my argument, including bank statements, receipts, and even text messages in which Noah and Adam made their rightful demands. It was both reassuring and frustrating to see everything presented in black and white. I had been telling myself for years that I was exaggerating and that things weren't as horrible as they appeared. However, the figures were honest. Adam and Noah had only offered criticism and grievances, but I had invested tens of thousands of dollars in that house. Additionally, Angela urged me to record the stairway incident. She stated, "We'll have to demonstrate that there has been a history of abusive or threatening behavior. Money isn't the only factor here. It's about establishing a secure environment for your future." Secure. I was surprised by how hard the word hit me. I had neglected my physical and emotional safety for years in favor of other people's needs. I was fighting for myself for the first time. I began quietly planning to start over. In the interim, I started moving my belongings covertly, one carload at a time, to a tiny apartment near my place of employment. I stayed as far away from Adam and Noah as I could because the house still felt like a minefield. Adam was hardly aware that I was gone. The majority of his time was spent glued to the couch or debating something with his father. Noah, meanwhile, was still upset that I had declined to purchase a car for him. It felt like a tightrope walk every time I interacted with him, but I didn't back down. Setting up the legal bombshell they would never have anticipated was the last piece of the puzzle. Angela prepared a civil lawsuit for damages related to the assault and financial exploitation, as well as eviction papers that would require them to leave the house within 30 days. She cautioned, "They won't take this well. Be ready for some criticism." With my resolve solidifying, I declared, "I'm ready. For too long, they have been pushing me around." Keeping my plans to myself was the most difficult aspect. I appeared distracted to my coworkers, but I dismissed their worries with evasive justifications about domestic stress. In actuality, I felt as though I was leading two separate lives. While one of me was discreetly regaining her independence, the other was still acting like the lovely wife and daughter-in-law. In my new apartment, I would lie awake in the middle of the night, reliving every moment. The hurt and rage would seethe inside me, threatening to overtake me. I would then consider the time I would deliver the documents to them. I saw their faces. Adam's apathy turning to incredulity, Noah's arrogant confidence crumbling, and it gave me the willpower to press on. At last, the day arrived. Angela's cool professionalism grounded me as she met me at the house. As we walked up the driveway, the pile of papers in her hand felt heavier than it should have, and my heart raced. When Noah opened the door and saw me standing next to Angela, his face instantly turned sour. "What are you looking for?" he yelled. Angela never skipped a beat. "Mr. Williams, you've been served," she said, passing the documents to him. "Within 30 days, you and your son must leave this property. In addition, my client is suing you in civil court for financial exploitation and assault-related damages." "What on earth is this?" Noah flipped through the papers and barked, his face flushed. "This is not possible for you. This is my home." "No," I said, maintaining a steady tone of voice in spite of my chest thumping. "It's my home. Additionally, you are no longer welcome here." Rubbing his eyes as if he had just woken up, Adam emerged in the doorway. "What's happening?" he muttered. The papers were thrust at him by Noah. "Your wife believes she can expel us. Is this unbelievable?" Adam furrowed his brow as he skimmed the papers. This is crazy, Maya. You can't just. I looked him in the eye and interrupted. I can, and I did. They were silent for a moment. I could see the panic beginning to seep into their faces as the situation's reality set in. They couldn't just dismiss this argument or use guilt to get me to comply with their demand. They were powerless to stop this from happening. Angela gestured for me to follow her as she turned to go. She declared, "They've been served. Leave now." I felt as though the burden of years of abuse had been lifted as I left. I felt free for the first time in years as I sat in my car across the street, watching Angela approach the door for the last time. The house felt uncannily quiet. She had demanded that the official lawsuit and notice of eviction enforcement be delivered by her. I had been waiting for this moment, the time when Noah and Adam would at last understand the seriousness of their actions. I watched Angela ring the doorbell and hold the papers with assurance. Noah opened the door a few moments later, his face changing from annoyance to bewilderment to unadulterated fury. I could hear his voice erupting even from my car. "This is absurd." With his fists clenched at his sides, he roared. "She can't harm me like this. This house has been my home for many years." Angela's tone stayed composed and businesslike. "Mr. Williams, this property is entirely owned by my client, Maya. As I mentioned when we last served you, your 30-day notice is over. Additionally, you are legally obligated to leave as of right now. Any non-compliance will lead to additional legal action." Behind him, Adam emerged. He moaned as he squinted at the papers Angela gave him, his face still swollen from sleep and his hair unkempt. "Maya, seriously, what is all this?" Angela did not recoil. "This is a civil lawsuit for damages totaling $20,000, including compensation for the physical assault, financial exploitation, and emotional distress caused by both Mr. Noah Williams and Mr. Adam Williams. These proceedings will move forward regardless of whether you vacate today." I could see Noah's rage boiling over as his face turned beet red. He grabbed the papers out of Adam's hands, tore them in two, and tossed the fragments on the porch. "You think this is going to scare me?" he yelled. "You can't evict family. This is my house." Angela remained motionless. "That's for the court to decide, Mr. Williams. But for now, the sheriff's department will be here shortly to ensure that the eviction is carried out." I saw Adam standing behind Noah, wide-eyed and in a panic, before he slammed the door in her face. He appeared to realize for the first time that this wasn't just another dispute that could be settled. There was no escape from this reality. Angela went back to the car and slid into the passenger seat, her steps deliberate. "They're fuming," she said, grinning wryly. "But I doubt they'll try anything stupid. The sheriff will handle it from here." I released a long breath that I had been holding without realizing it. I had been caught in a vicious cycle of caving in and allowing their disrespect, abuse, and entitlement to wear me down for years. Now, however, I was in charge for the first time. Felt good, but it felt alien. I gave myself permission to visualize the scene inside the house while we waited for the sheriff. Noah was pacing hysterically and complaining about how unfair everything was. To avoid interacting, Adam most likely slouched on the couch and browsed through his phone. Adam had always followed Noah's instructions. I cleaned up the mess, and they had always had the same dynamic. However, that is no longer the case. Noah screamed at the officers about how he had been wronged and rushed outside when the sheriff's car arrived. "She's lying. This is my house. I've lived here for decades. She can't just throw me out like this." Angela handed him the paperwork, which the lead officer calmly went over. "This property is legally in Ms. Maya's name, and these eviction proceedings are valid," he insisted. "You've been given ample notice, Mr. Williams. You need to gather your belongings and vacate immediately." Noah screamed, his voice full of rage. "I won't. You'll have to drag me out of here." At last, Adam came out with a hurriedly packed duffel bag. His expression was a mix of confusion and rage as he glanced at me from the other side of the street. "Why are you doing this, Maya? We're family." Family was a word that sliced through me like a blade. For years, they had twisted its meaning to support their disrespect and entitlement, using it as a weapon. However, I was determined not to be held captive by it any longer. I exited the car and looked directly into Adam's eyes with a level of composure I wasn't aware I possessed. "Family doesn't push you down the stairs," I stated steadily. "Family doesn't take your money and treat you like you owe them everything. This house is mine, my life is mine, and I won't let either of you take anything more from me." I didn't hear Noah yelling something unintelligible from the porch. I looked at Adam, who looked at me for a long time before lowering his gaze. He didn't have a comeback for once. No justifications. With his father still yelling behind him, he slung the duffel bag over his shoulder and trudged down the driveway without saying another word. Angela put a comforting hand on my shoulder as the sheriff's officers led Noah back inside to collect his things. "You've done it," she uttered softly. "This chapter is over." I was overcome with feelings of relief, pride, and an overwhelming sense of freedom as I watched Adam and Noah leave the house for the last time. This was more than just a legal win. I considered it a win for myself. I had defeated those who had attempted to denigrate me for the first time in years. A tiny smile tugged at my lips as I turned to face Angela. "Let's go," I said. "I've got a life to rebuild." The absence of Noah and Adam made the house feel so much bigger. I was struck by how different everything seemed without their constant presence. As I moved through the silent rooms, the area that had previously felt confining felt like a blank canvas, a place I could at last call my own. The last remnants of their entitlement had been taken with the sheriff when he left a short time ago. Up until the very end, Noah had resisted, complaining about the unfair treatment he had received. However, he had nothing left to hold on to. A shadow of the man who had once pledged to start a life with me, Adam had been more reserved. It had been bittersweet to watch him go, pulling his duffel bag down the driveway. I was no longer angry, only pitying as I locked the front door. Angela remained by my side. Her tone was warm as she said, "You've done something not many people have the courage to do. It's hard to walk away from people you've invested so much in, even when they don't deserve it." As her words sank in, I nodded. "I think I finally realized it wasn't just about the money," I replied. "It was about taking back control. For years, I let them make me feel like I didn't have a choice, like I owed them everything. But I don't owe them anything." I started to piece my life back together over the course of the following few days. To help get rid of the tangible reminders of Noah and Adam's presence, I hired a cleaning service and changed the locks on the house. Erasing the mess they had left behind felt symbolic, almost healing. I didn't feel alienated in my own house for the first time in years. Coworkers and friends contacted me to see how I was doing and to offer words of support and encouragement. "You're amazing for standing up for yourself," Lily said one afternoon while we were having coffee. "It would have been so easy to just keep putting up with it, but you didn't." I confess, I think I just reached a breaking point when Adam told me I should have given Noah the money, I replied. I realized he didn't care about me at all. And if he didn't care, then why was I giving so much of myself to him? Lily gave a nod. It's hard to see that when you're in it, but you're out now. That's what matters. I once had calls from Noah and Adam, but I didn't answer. Angela gave me her word that they had no legal basis to contest the lawsuit or the eviction. She declared, "You've already won," and I took her word for it. I felt untouchable for the first time in a long time. I turned my attention to the future. I began looking into new hobbies and career options that I had put off for too long. I had more time and energy to devote to myself since I wasn't burdened by their demands. I even started thinking about selling the house, my house, and relocating somewhere where the ghosts of the past were not present. I took some time to think back on the path that had led me here one evening while enjoying a glass of wine on the patio. Although it hadn't been simple at all, each step and each difficult moment had taught me something about my own resilience. I had allowed other people to determine my value for years. However, that is no longer the case. With the stars just starting to appear in the sky, I gazed out at the peaceful street. I felt completely free for the first time in years. I was at last living this life according to my own terms. After a few months, everything in my life had changed drastically. The house where Noah and Adam used to live no longer felt like a prison. Now it was mine, really mine. The life I was reconstructing for myself was reflected in every nook and cranny. Peace and quiet now filled the walls that once echoed with their entitlement and demands. I had finally decided to list the house for sale, which felt like a permanent end to that chapter. The lawsuit against Noah was moving forward in my favor, and Angela assisted me in overcoming the financial and legal obstacles. There was more to the compensation I could expect than just financial gain. The goal was to make him answerable. The knowledge that he would be held accountable for his actions brought a sense of closure in and of itself. Things felt lighter in my new apartment. I finally had the time and energy to devote to myself without the constant weight of their expectations. I resumed my yoga practice, picked up painting again, and even organized a trip to a peaceful seaside town that I had always wanted to see. I felt like I was living, not just surviving, for the first time in years. My loved ones became aware of the shift. "You look happier," Lily remarked during one of our coffee dates. "Like a weight's been lifted." "Because it has," I grinned and replied. "For years, I thought walking away meant giving up. But now I realize it was the bravest thing I've ever done." She made a fictitious toast with her cup. "To brave new beginnings. And to never settling for less," I added as I pressed my cup to hers. I was no longer troubled by Noah and Adam's absence. I stopped thinking about what had happened that night on the stairs and stopped questioning whether I had made the correct decision. I was certain that I had. Despite their attempts to minimize me, their actions ultimately strengthened me. I was able to move on without their explanations or apologies. They had nothing to do with the new life I had created, and that was sufficient. A few weeks later, the lawsuit's final verdict was rendered. Damages were ordered to be paid by Noah, and even though I didn't think he would ever voluntarily take responsibility, the decision provided me with closure. It was a formal recognition of all that I had gone through, an affirmation that my story was significant. I stood in the empty living room one last time on the day I gave the house's keys to the new owners, allowing the memories to pass. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger. All of it was still there, but I was no longer under its control. I regained my authority, and in doing so, I rediscovered who I am. I experienced a calmness I hadn't experienced in years as I went outside and shut the door. The path ahead was clear and paved with opportunities, and I was eager to see where it would take me for the first time in a long time. This marked the conclusion of more than one chapter. It was the start of a story that was all mine. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I called off my engagement to my fiancée after she requested a break to explore her ex. I sold our house and disappeared. Hello, everyone. After what seems like an age, I, 27 male, felt it was time to talk about what has been going on with me lately. The trouble is, until recently, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, Tessa, 26, female. We'd been together for 4 years, and for the most part, I believed we were good. But now, I'm sitting here wondering why I hadn't seen this coming sooner. Tessa and I met at a birthday party, introduced by a mutual friend. She was funny, confident, and had a straightforward style that I liked. I dated before, but no one connected with me as she did. We connected instantly and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, as if we were all on the same page regarding careers, marriage, and eventually starting a family. She was a freelance graphic designer, and I worked as a project manager for a technology company, so our schedules were somewhat comparable. Life was not flashy, but it was delightful. We had been talking about getting married for a while, but it wasn't until last year that I proposed. Nothing spectacular, just a regular dinner at home for the two of us. Tessa appeared thrilled. She cried, hugged me, and consented. That night, we began to plan our future. A fall wedding with a small guest list and this gorgeous lakeside location. It appeared that everything was coming into place, or so I thought. The earliest red flags were little, invisible. They were little issues that I overlooked since I didn't want to overthink. For example, Tessa's passion for wedding planning waned after a few months. She was all in at first, sending me Pinterest boards, looking through wedding gowns, and inquiring about minor matters like whether I wanted tulips or roses for the centerpiece. But then it abruptly ceased. I'd ask her stuff like, "Hey, have you chosen your bridesmaids yet?" And she'd blow them off. "Not yet. I'm still thinking about it," she repeated. The same thing happened with her outfit, cake, and music. Every decision we'd been so excited about had become something she wished to postpone. "There's still time," she'd explain. The wedding seemed like an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Furthermore, Tessa had a lot going on at work. I expected her to snap out of it eventually. What I didn't know was that her lack of enthusiasm was not for the wedding, but for us. The actual slap in the face occurred one night when we were out with some friends. Someone mentioned the idiotic TikTok game, which you've probably seen. It's the one where you have to answer personal inquiries with a straight face and avoid passing judgment. Everything was going well until someone asked, "If you could relive one relationship, which would it be?" Tessa said without hesitation, "Oh, probably Dylan." Just like that. Dylan, her college ex, the one who cheated on her. The moment she said that, the room went awkwardly quiet. She chuckled sheepishly and tried to backtrack, saying, "I mean, not that I'd want to. It's just a significant element of my past." I wanted to confront her right there, but we were among friends, so I let it go. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about it. "What was it about Dylan? Why did you decide to revisit that relationship?" She just shrugged it off as if it were no big deal. "That was a silly game, Liam. Don't take it too seriously," she said, changing the subject. I didn't pursue it since I didn't want to start a fight over something so little, but it lingered in my mind. After that, her conduct became more impossible to ignore. She was using her phone more frequently, scrolling through her texts with a sly little smile, and making vague excuses for why she couldn't hang out or why she would cancel arrangements at the last minute. "Oh, sorry, I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight," she'd usually say. Alternatively, "I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend." The excuses were not particularly suspect, but they added up, and it appeared that I had become less of a priority. Then came Friday night, which altered everything. I arrived home from work early, eager to spend the evening with Tessa, hoping we could order in and binge-watch something. A quiet night. When I walked in, the mood looked strange. She was sitting on the couch, holding her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was staring at the screen, completely inattentive. "Hey, I'm home," I said softly, attempting to break the tension. "You're early," she replied as if it was a bad thing. I brushed it off and went into the kitchen to start preparing dinner, but the silence in the home was suffocating. Normally, she'd ask how my day was or tell me about hers, but tonight, nothing. Finally, I looked around and inquired, "Is everything all right?" She closed her laptop and looked at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." And my stomach plummeted. You know how you feel when you know something bad is about to happen but can't stop it? That was me, standing there like an idiot with a spatula in one hand. I approached and sat across from her. "All right," I replied. "What's going on?" She paused as if struggling to find the right words. She just came out with it. "I've been thinking about us, and about Dylan." I swear I almost laughed. "Dylan? Are you serious? What about him?" She bit her lip and averted my sight. "I suppose I need some time to consider things through. I'd like to take a break and see whether there's still something there with him." I couldn't believe what I'd heard. "Do you want to take a break and date your ex? Are you out of your mind, Tessa? We're engaged." "It's not like that," she said quickly, as if she could smooth things up. "I just want to know whether I'm making the correct choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I promise to return." That's when I realized how arrogant she was. She believed I'd sit around and wait for her to decide if I was good enough. I didn't yell or blow up. Instead, I sat there staring at her, wondering how I hadn't seen this coming. I wasn't sure how to respond at first. My fiancé recently informed me that she wants to take a break to explore things with her ex, Dylan. What can you say to that? Finally, I inquired, "So, what does this break signify for you?" My voice sounded more calm than I felt. She straightened up slightly, as if she were prepared for this conversation. "I think we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if my feelings for Dylan are genuine, and you're allowed to think about us as well. I couldn't believe their arrogance. Wait, I answered, leaning closer. You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to think about us? What kind of backward logic is that? Tessa sighed as if I were being ridiculous. It's not that you did anything wrong, Liam. This is about me determining what I need. She appeared to have practiced this. The way she spoke, the way she avoided eye contact. It was as if she had already decided this was going to happen and just wanted me to accept it. You realize this sounds insane, right? I mumbled. You don't just put your fiancé on wait while you play, what if, with some guy who treats you like crap. Her expression stiffened, and I noticed for the first time how stubborn she could be. I am not asking for permission, Liam. I'm telling you what I need. That one landed differently. I wasn't just sad. I was angry. So I rose up and started pacing, hoping to calm myself down. So what, Tessa? You're just going to pack your bags and head over to Dylan's place? Is this your huge plan? No, she insisted. It's not like that. I'm not sure what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before moving forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the correct decision. Do you owe it to yourself? I asked, laughing cruelly. And what about what you owe me, Tessa? We're engaged. We're meant to be starting a life together. And now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough. I never said you weren't good enough, she continued, her voice rising. But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I need to be sure. And right now I am not. That was it. She wasn't just interested in doing new things with Dylan. She was also unsure about me, even after 4 years together and all of our goals. It struck me all at once. She hadn't realized how terrible and stupid her request was, and she thought it was appropriate for me to just sit there while she figured out whatever stupidity was going through her head. I stopped pacing and peered at her. Do you know what? I replied, my tone flat. Sure, take a break. She blinked, astonished at how quickly I agreed. Liam, I am not trying to hurt you. I just need space to figure things out. I nodded with a blank expression. All right, if that's all you need. She stopped, as if she expected me to argue or fight for her. And when I didn't, she rose up, took out her laptop and whispered, I'll stay at my mother's for a while. This will not last forever. We'll discuss when I have some time. Okay? I responded simply. She looked at me, unsure how to respond, and then disappeared into the bedroom where I could hear her moving around and throwing things into a bag. I remained calm on the couch, but my thoughts were already racing. If she genuinely needs a break, that's okay. Let her have it. Several minutes later, I heard the front door close, and she was gone, possibly thinking she had abandoned me here to wait and worry. She had no idea I wasn't going to sit around and do nothing. She could have her fantasy, but I had other plans. And I'll provide an update once I've put certain things in motion. This isn't going to end the way she expects. Update 1. Thank you for your comments and recommendations on my previous post. A lot has happened this week, and I'd like to share how things are progressing. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone in this community for their tremendous support. Many of you said that I shouldn't just sit around waiting, and you were accurate. I've been busy putting things into action. First, I contacted Noah, my best buddy since college, and he is not the type of man to sugarcoat things. After hearing the whole story, he brought over pizza, and we spent the entire night plotting. Dude, you know she'll attempt to crawl back if things don't work out with Dylan, right? Noah reminded him. Of course, he was accurate, and the more we talked, the clearer it became that I needed to take action. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about restoring control of my life. I began with the house. Tessa doesn't seem to remember that it's totally in my name, and she loves to behave as if it's our home, always talking about the curtains and paint colors she chose, despite the fact that I pay the mortgage. I called a realtor first thing Monday morning, and we decided to list it right away. The market in our neighborhood is now hot, and we already have several potential buyers. Tessa has no idea. She probably thinks I'm sitting here in our shared home, waiting for her to sort out her feelings. The second stage was to gently remove her from my life. Remember those live, laugh, love posters she insisted on putting up? They're gone. Did she really need those wonderful throw pillows? They're donated. Her clothing and personal belongings that she left behind? I carefully packaged them all up. But this is where I became strategic. Instead of simply dropping her belongings off at her mother's house or having her come fetch them, I hired a moving company who took everything to her mother's house and left a brief note. "This is your stuff. Good luck with Dylan." I realize some of you may think this is petty, but I disagree. I'm not being vindictive. I'm being efficient. She needed some space to think things through. She has it literally. The most exciting moment occurred when common friends began asking questions. Instead of playing the victim or slandering her, I simply told the truth. Tessa felt she needed to discuss things with her ex before committing to marriage. I decided I deserved more than being someone's backup plan. You should see how people react to that. No drama, no accusations, just facts. It's incredible how quickly the story changes when you don't try to control it. I've also been making moves at work. I applied for a position at our West Coast office that I'd been thinking about for a long time. If the house sells, which seems likely, and I get this job, I'll be starting over on the other side of the nation. Tessa has attempted to contact me numerous times this week, first with humorous texts like, "Hope you're doing okay," and progressing to increasingly anxious messages once she realized I was actually making changes rather than merely waiting around. She was in a panic yesterday when her mother told her the boxes had arrived. "What are you doing? Why are you acting as if this is over?" I kept my response simple. "Because it's over, Tessa. You made your decision, and now I'll make mine." She started crying, stating that she only needed time to think things through, that I was being too hasty, and that this was not what she meant when she asked for a break. "What were you expecting?" I questioned her. "That I'd wait here like a faithful puppy while you test drove your ex? That is not how this works." "But what if I realize you are the one I want?" She was crying. "Then you'll have learned a valuable lesson about not taking people for granted," I explained before hanging up the phone. The strange thing is that I'm no longer upset. Instead, I feel freed. Every box I pack, every move I make feels like I'm reclaiming aspects of myself that I hadn't realized I'd given up. Noah came by again yesterday to help me pack the house, and he saw the shift in me. "You seem different," he said. "More focused." He's right. I'm different. When Tessa initially expressed her willingness to pursue things with Dylan, I felt like my world was collapsing. Now, I see it wasn't my world collapsing, but rather the false reality I'd been living in finally disintegrating. I have more ideas in the works, but I'll save them for the next post. For the time being, I'll just say this. Sometimes the best way to respond to someone treating you as an option is to remove yourself entirely from their list of alternatives. Stay tuned. This story hasn't concluded yet, and I have a feeling Tessa's break to sort things out isn't going to go as planned. Update 2. I appreciate all of the responses on my recent update. Things have escalated dramatically, and I'd like to explain how the situation has developed. Remember how I mentioned applying for the West Coast position? Well, I got it, and the timing couldn't be better. The house is under contract, with the closing scheduled for next month. But that's only the beginning. What's particularly interesting is how Tessa's Dylan exploration is unfolding. Through mutual connections, I discovered that their restored passion isn't quite the fairy tale she envisioned. It appears that 4 years haven't changed him much. He's still the untrustworthy guy who cheated on her in college. Tessa has sought to control the narrative on social media by spreading vague, encouraging platitudes about finding yourself and following your heart. So I decided to play the same game but with a twist. I wrote a single, factual post, update on my life. I'm excited to say that I've accepted a position in San Francisco. Sometimes, when one door shuts, another opens. I'm looking forward to this new chapter. People congratulated me, inquired about the relocation, and of course asked about Tessa. I kept my responses simple and honest. We are no longer together. She wants to look into other choices, so I am doing the same. This sparked off a terrific chain reaction in our social circle. Remember those people who weren't sure about the situation? Watching me handle it with grace as Tessa shared cryptic relationship quotes completely transformed the environment. Sarah, 29, female, A mutual colleague in the computer business who used to refer many clients to Tessa contacted me about Tessa's freelance design job, which is mostly relying on referrals and networking. I need to know what happened, Sarah said while drinking a coffee. Tessa's telling people you're having a temporary separation to grow individually, but something feels off. I shared Tessa's note about wanting to date Dylan, and Sarah's expression said it all. She didn't believe it. By the end of the week, several potential clients had pushed back their projects with Tessa. Not because I said anything bad, but because, honestly, who wants to work with someone who takes commitment so lightly? Tessa sensed a difference, and her texts became more frequent and agitated. Why are you telling others about Dylan? You are damaging my reputation. This is not fair. I simply needed time to consider. I replied to the last question. You got what you wanted, time and space. How I spend mine is no longer your concern. The turning point came when Dylan, in his infinite wisdom, published a photo of them together in the restaurant where Tessa and I had our first date. It was clear she was attempting to recreate our history with him, which was both sad and humorous. The post didn't stay long, but the damage was done. Our acquaintances witnessed it, and the few people who still believe Tessa's finding myself story lost regard for her. Even her own sister contacted me. I am really sorry for how she is taking this. You deserve better. What was the most fulfilling aspect? I didn't have to be vengeful. I simply lived my life freely and honestly. Whereas Tessa tried to play both sides, the truth has a way of coming out. She came to my office yesterday. Dylan seemed to have already shown his true colors, flirting with other women, being untrustworthy, a common narrative. She was crying. I made a tremendous mistake, she cried. I was afraid of commitment. I assumed I needed to know if there was anything better out there, but I was mistaken. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I merely looked at her calmly. No, Tessa. The nicest thing that ever occurred to me was when you revealed your true colors before we married. She tried to argue, saying that we could solve it, that she would go to counseling, and that she would prove she could be trusted again. But I simply shook my head. You don't understand, do you? This isn't about Dylan anymore. This is about you thinking you can keep me as a backup while you consider your options. That's not love. It's convenience. She left my office distraught, but I was feeling better than ever. The house closes next week, the majority of my stuff has been packed, and my new life in San Francisco begins in a month. The funny thing is that some people think I'm being overly tough. Everyone makes mistakes, they explain. But this was not a mistake. It was a choice. Every time she texted Dylan, she lied about where she was, and she spent every second planning to put our romance on hold. These were all options. I'll send another update after the move is over, but in the meanwhile, I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but rather getting better, which is precisely what I'm doing. Update 3. Thank you for following my voyage. This is my final post, and I have some fascinating happenings to tell. San Francisco is everything I dreamed it would be. My new apartment has a breathtaking view of the bay. The tech environment is amazing, and my new office team is fantastic. It's nice to be around people that value progress and creativity over drama. But first, let me catch you up on how things ended back home. The closing went smoothly, and the house actually sold for more than the asking price. It was interesting to see Tessa's reaction after finding out through mutual friends, as she didn't believe I'd sold the house until she drove by and saw the new owners move in. Here's where things got really interesting. Remember Dylan? He reached out to me, of all people, and sent me a long note explaining how he never wanted to cause difficulties and that Tessa had approached him first, months before she sought the break. Tessa had been planning her little exploration for quite some time. She had been messaging Dylan for months, carefully laying the groundwork for her backup strategy. What's with the irony? Dylan ended their relationship because, as he put it, if she could do this to you, she could do it to anyone. Tessa's career repercussions have been enormous. Remember all the clients she'd lined up? The majority of them found other designers. Not because I said anything, but because word spreads in the industry. One of her largest clients really contacted me. We heard what happened with the engagement, they explained. We're searching for someone who can commit to long-term initiatives. Do you know any reliable designers? I recommended a skilled acquaintance of mine, and she was awarded the contract. Karma, I suppose. Tessa's social media collapse was a sight to behold, beginning with somber quotes about losing your sweetheart and progressing to angry messages about toxic people who can't handle growth. Finally, she made desperate attempts to show everyone how happy she was. The last one was extremely interesting. She wrote about starting her own design firm, and 3 days later, she started sending out job applications. Her sister contacted me again last week, indicating that Tessa has been staying with their parents and that she needs time to heal after their split. She truly expected you to wait for her. When you sold the house and moved, her ideal was entirely shattered. The most encouraging moment came during a video conversation with our old friend group when someone mentioned seeing Tessa at a coffee shop, explaining to a potential customer why her portfolio website was down. Apparently, she forgot that I was the one who set it up and maintained it, and when her hosting membership ended, she couldn't figure out how to reinstate it, which is no longer my responsibility. My new life is coming together wonderfully. I've joined a local rock climbing club, started taking Spanish classes, and even adopted a dog from a local shelter named Zeus, who is a better friend than my ex-fiancé. Last week, I was invited to speak at a developer conference, which would not have happened if I had stayed at home. It's incredible what you can accomplish when you're not lugging dead weight. The tech community here is quite welcoming. I had one last interaction with Tessa. She sent me an email demanding some old photographs from our shared cloud storage, which I had already deleted and canceled several weeks ago. Her email said, "I understand you're attempting to eliminate me from your life, but you can't simply delete our memories. Those 4 years meant something." My response was simple. You're correct. Those years taught me what I don't want from a spouse. Thank you for the lesson. Some common acquaintances think I'm being very harsh and should be more understanding of her moment of confusion. However, it wasn't a moment. It was a deliberate decision to keep me as a safety net while she sought what she saw as a better alternative. What is the most significant thing I've learned from all of this? Sometimes the worst things that happen to you result in the best outcomes. If Tessa hadn't showed her true colors, I may have married her, only to discover her true personality years later, possibly with children in the mix. Instead, I'm in a gorgeous city with a wonderful job, making new friends, and feeling positive about the future. The sorrow of betrayal has been replaced with gratitude for avoiding a gunshot. Thank you to everyone who has followed the tale and given advice. Your support has helped me stay strong when I may have wavered. And for anyone going through a similar circumstance, know this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them right away. Don't wait for them to change their opinion about you. Life is too short to be someone's backup plan. Sometimes the best thing you can do is take a step back and improve your own situation. That's it for now, guys. This chapter of my life has officially concluded, and I can't wait for the next one to begin. Take care and many thanks for everything. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My wife cheated with my stepbrother, got pregnant, and I told her parents. Now she's cut off from her inheritance. I, 34M, and my wife, 29F, have been married for 2 years. Our relationship has been rather ordinary. We met at a work event many years ago, became friends for a few years, then realized we had feelings for one another and began dating. We dated for 3 years before I asked her to marry me, so we've been together for about 6 years. We never had any issues, either while courting or after we married. She is gorgeous, intelligent, and a wonderful partner for me. I have done my best to be a good husband to her, and we are happy together. Around 6 months ago, my stepbrother, Darren, 28M, was sacked from his work. Instead of looking for another career, he opted to spend some time traveling and finding himself. Darren has always been unpredictable and spontaneous. My parents had a difficult time convincing him to go to college and earn a degree. He is constantly full of wacky ideas that he needs to be talked out of, but being dismissed from his job because he was intoxicated during a business meeting is serious. Despite his history, he resolved to quit drinking. Despite my fears that he would abandon this project halfway through, I attempted to be supportive for my father's sake. My parents divorced while I was a child, and my father married Darren's mother when I was a teenager. So, when Darren asked if he could stay at my house for a few weeks to tour New York, I wasn't sure how to say no. I was suspicious and unwilling to do it, but when my father and stepmother urged me to let him stay, I couldn't say no. I questioned my wife and she said she was fine with it, so I grudgingly gave in. Darren came to live with us 2 months ago. I made it clear that he could not bring anyone into the flat and that even if he could leave and return anytime he pleased, it should not disrupt our sleep. Surprisingly, he agreed with all of my rules. For the first few days, he stayed out virtually all night, and I even saw him arrive as late as 7 a.m. when I was already up and preparing for work. Aside from that, he was fairly polite, having supper with me and my wife at our home and even cooking for us on a few occasions. I was pleasantly surprised. This was not the Darren I'd known my entire life. My wife and I had scheduled a weekend trip to Vegas the second weekend Darren was staying with us because I had worked there. We told Darren to take care of the place until we returned. Everything was planned, but my wife developed a severe stomach flu at the last minute. It was Thursday night, and we were meant to leave the next morning. We were both really unhappy, but we assumed she would go if she felt better. Unfortunately, her illness worsened the next morning, and by the time we were scheduled to depart, she was too ill to travel. I tried to reschedule my job commitment and postpone our trip, but it was too late and I needed to travel. I felt terrible about leaving her in that state, but I knew Darren would be there in case her health worsened. He offered to stay at home and cook her meals as well. I vowed to return as early as possible on Saturday morning and then left. Looking back, I can't believe I didn't see that coming. So I went to Vegas by myself, returned the next day, and found that my wife was doing better. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after that weekend, I noticed Darren was home more frequently than usual. Previously, he went out every day, but now he hasn't left the flat in several days. I asked whether everything was fine, and he just shrugged, claiming he was trying to save his money. I didn't think much of it at first, but as time passed, I began to notice more things that stood out. When I returned from work one day, I discovered that my wife had already arrived home. Apparently, she had taken a half-day off due to a headache and forgot to notify me. Another day, I arrived home early and noticed Darren and my wife entering the house together. They stated that they had just met outside the building. This could just be a coincidence, but I had a horrible feeling about it. I had never questioned my wife's devotion before, and while Darren was a messy person, I didn't think he could do something so heinous as that. Still, I couldn't ignore the impression that something was off. I knew I couldn't accuse them of anything without evidence, and doing so would cause upheaval in my family, which I wasn't prepared to cope with. So, I took a straightforward approach. I asked Darren how long he planned on staying with us. I reminded him that while it was fantastic to have him around, he should think about his future moves. Thankfully, he caught the message and stated he'd be leaving within a week. My wife was in the room during the chat, but she said nothing, which made me uneasy. Darren moved out, and I attempted to ignore my misgivings, concentrating on my marriage rather than worrying about the worst-case situation. Things improved after he departed, and I began to believe I had been overly paranoid. I was mortified to think that my wife would do something like that, especially because she had been the perfect spouse all these years. However, around 2 weeks ago, something happened. We discovered that my wife was pregnant. 2 months, to be exact. You probably know where this is headed. When Darren moved in with us 2 months ago, I felt sick to my stomach. I'll offer you some context. I am a few years older than my wife, as I previously stated. By the time I was 30, I was ready to settle down and establish my own family. When my wife and I first started dating, I knew she was the one for me and wanted to marry her. However, she believed she was too young to have children and wanted to wait a few years before making that decision. Though it wasn't what I desired, I approved of her choice. We always took precautions since we decided to wait until she was 30 to start looking for children. My wife always insisted we'd be very careful since her body reacts poorly to hormonal birth control, and she is not on any tablets. I also always used protection. Accidents do happen, of course, but I could not get over the sense that something was off. I felt the timing to be unsettling. She said she wanted to keep the baby, that although this was unplanned, it was a good thing and we ought to be glad. Long since I had desired children under different conditions, I would have been ecstatic. But instead, I was in excruciating pain. Though I attempted to seem content to my wife, I don't think I have ever felt worse. Uncertain of what to do, I wanted no one to criticize me, thus I couldn't talk to any of my friends about it. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the bad ideas and emotions. I knew I couldn't continue living in total anguish. After about 1 week, I had to face my bride. I knew this would have a terrible effect on our marriage, and should I turn out to be mistaken, she might never pardon me. But I kept thinking of the worst. The prospect of her carrying the baby of my stepbrother made me sick. After our first visit completed several blood tests and procedures, all I could feel was total devastation. I decided to talk to her as I could no longer handle it. I got ready for the worst. I told her I had to talk to her about something quite crucial about a week ago during supper. She wanted to know straight away. Though afraid, I aimed to be as direct as I could. I apologized for feeling this way, but I questioned her whether she actually carried my child. My question seemed to have startled her. Her whole face flushed red, and she began shouting, accusing me of being a monster for questioning her and committing something so terrible. She said she had never strayed from me. She wondered where all this was coming from, and I told her it was too much of a coincidence. She was 2 months pregnant, the same length of time Darren had left. She became much more irate as a result and began yelling even more. Seeing the situation becoming bad, I tried to cool her down and get her to pay attention to me. I told her it hurt for me to live with these uncertainties. I told her about the events that occurred during Darren's stay, wishing I had no harbors of uncertainty and felt something was off. She seemed to relax a little and assured me she knew I had questions. But she also advised me to believe her and our marriage would be stronger. Though I felt awful, I told her I wished I could just ignore these ideas, having attempted. I wanted a paternity test following the birth if there was really nothing to worry about. I even said I knew how tough this must be for her, but I had to be sure for my own peace of mind. She seemed to be really more extreme than I had expected. Clearly, I didn't expect her to be entirely cool with this, and felt she might flare out a little if she was angry. Before the reference to a paternity test sent her off, she said I was nasty and she couldn't believe I would force her to go through something so embarrassing over my crazy thoughts. Though I attempted to remain cool, really seeing her so against the concept made me feel as though my suspicions were vindicated, and I started to get enraged. I told her this was an ultimatum, that if she disagreed, I doubted we could be together. She admitted she needed time to consider it, and this seemed to help her somewhat relax. That evening we slept in different rooms. We said nothing to one another. The next morning before reporting to work, I fantasized the worst-case scenario as the truth all day. The remainder of the week reflected that she would ignore me and arrive home late at night. She grew upset every time I tried to chat to her, so I finally gave up. I had no notion she was merely deciding on her next action. When I got up in the morning last Thursday, I discovered she had not returned home the evening before. She never responded when I texted her many times. I had to report to work, but I was so agitated that I couldn't concentrate and so left early for home. I waited hours for her, but I grew rather concerned when she still hadn't returned home by 9 p.m. and would not answer my calls. Not sure what else to do, I asked her assistant at work about her. My surprise was that she hadn't been to work and had taken 2 personal days. Her assistant expressed amazement at my ignorance of this. I was somewhat concerned at that point and phoned some of her friends to see whether she was with any of them. I started picturing the worst when all of them claimed they hadn't heard from her. I fretted about her leaving me or about something happening to her. I asked my mother-in-law, Amael, as a last resort whether she was with her. She wasn't, but upon learning my wife had vanished for 2 days, my Amael started to get really concerned. She promised to try to get to her and let me know whether there was any update. Should she still be inaccessible, we agreed to phone 911. I was completely terrified in the next half hour, but suddenly my wife called. She stated she was absolutely fine, wanted some time to sort things out, and that I had no need to stress her out for no cause or involve her mother. She sounded even angrier, very apathetic. I became enraged when she showed no regard for freaking me out, but I calmed down and asked her where she was and when she was returning. She hung up, then declared she would be returning early the next morning. Afraid and somewhat angry, I went to bed. I considered spending some time apart from her. I had no idea what lay ahead of me. The next morning she woke me up and seemed especially content. She stated she was fixing a problem when I asked her where she had been the day before. Trust me when I say I spent weeks considering every conceivable scenario that might go wrong. What she said next was crazier than anything I could have imagined. She explained that this pregnancy was killing our marriage and causing foolish questions in my head. Hence, she decided to rescue our marriage by means of an abortion. She met my eyes squarely and stated, "Now I had no reason to question her loyalty. We could start our marriage anew." I looked astounded. I had never used that word and really meant it before in my life. I simply asked her if she was kidding. After just staring at her, she stated she was totally serious and hoped I could unwind now and stop allowing stupid worries to disturb me anymore. That served as my breaking point. After several more minutes of staring at her, I stood up and departed. Spending another second with her worried me that I would have some kind of mental collapse. She started to follow me, but if she wanted peace, I advised her to avoid me. I guess my tone was severe enough to stop her. I phoned my attorney on the way out of the building to let her know I was divorcing my wife and needed to start the process immediately. I also scheduled a meeting for the following morning and advised her we had to make sure my wife missed a penny of my money. Though I had no idea exactly how things would turn out, I knew what I had to do. I asked Darren where he was when I phoned. He claimed to be in Atlanta someplace. I asked him not to waste my time. Simply admit that they had slept together. I was divorcing my wife. He said nothing for a few minutes, then simply apologized to me. That helped me too. I understood there was nothing else to say. For the evening, I checked into a hotel and got ready for what I knew was in store. I woke up the next morning, headed straight to my attorney, and gave her all the specifics. The infidelity, the abortion, everything. She claimed that we did have a shot even though it's tough to have a clean divorce with no alimony unless both sides come to a mutual understanding, as my wife has a high-paying job of her own and is most certainly the one at fault here. Really, I was more concerned with the cause than with the money. With this woman, I was finished. She could be very frigid, which astounded me. It seemed like I had lived all these years among strangers. The person I loved and married would not be able to do anything as crazy. She had slept with my stepbrother, but there was still a possibility she was pregnant with my baby. Now we would never know. Changing my plans to suit her wants and doing everything I could to be a decent husband after almost 6 years in this marriage, this is what I received. Inquiring whether she was at work, I phoned her assistant. I urged her not to tell my wife I phoned and lied about arranging a surprise for her. I then headed home, loaded as many of her items as I could into 3 suitcases, and arranged them in the hall. Changing our locks and phoning a locksmith came next. I wanted no sight of her. I wanted her out of my house, gone, not wanting to be home when she got back. I then stuffed some of my own items in an overnight bag and headed back to my hotel. It was almost 5 p.m. by the time everything was finished, and I was worn out, physical and psychological. I slept on the bed and nodded out as soon as I got to my motel. My phone rang when I woke up. In fact, it was my wife, but I chose to treat her with the same indifference that she had shown me the day she obtained the abortion behind my back. She persisted in phoning, and I ignored a million books that she recommended regarding all that. I had nothing to say to her. She stopped at last after over an hour of unrelenting calls. She had apparently given up. But then I received a text from Darren stating she had contacted him and inquired as to whether I had spoken with him. It was finished. He informed her I knew everything. Again over text, he apologized. I couldn't care less, not texting him either. I started considering what to do next. The following phase was where I might have gone a little too far, but I was devastated and embarrassed. What else to do eluded me. One thing you should know about my wife is that she is from a quite traditional Southern background. They do things a particular way over there, and since we were married, she has been under pressure to have children. I had been on her side at every family gathering for years, helping to back our slow approach. I never once said that her desire to wait was the sole reason we weren't trying for children. I knew that her family would not be very happy if they discovered she had an abortion and cheated. I thus decided to phone my mother-in-law and simply be petty once in a lifetime. I gently went over everything with her and advised her that I was divorcing her daughter for betraying my confidence. She first doubted me and sounded embarrassed about the abortion. I could show her the positive pregnancy test and the doctor's notes from our first appointment. Darren had previously acknowledged the affair. She may have her daughter clarify the rest. My wife was blowing up my phone in no time, exactly as I had anticipated. I tried to wait it out, but I ultimately picked up when she wouldn't stop after an hour and a half of unrelenting calling. Her answer was as predicted. She screamed I was ruining her life for no reason and she had nowhere to stay for the evening. She was beyond enraged. I informed her she was welcome to check into any hotel of her choice but not to irritate me. I disregarded her attempts to prod me. She would be hearing from my lawyer shortly, and any correspondence from now on would go via our lawyers, I advised her. I also assured her that I would pack and deliver everything she desired wherever. She then told me she could forget about ever inheriting a cent from her parents since her parents were quite enraged with her and declared she was no longer welcome in their family. From my in-laws, this was surprising. Although I expected them to be enraged, I did not believe they would act in this extreme manner. I obviously told my wife none of this. Rather, I advised her she should have considered this before turning around behind my back and that none of my concern was what her parents chose to do. Saying I shouldn't have dragged her parents into our marital troubles since now her life was shattered and she had nobody left. She labeled me immature and petty. I hung up on her and replied I couldn't care less. She then started texting me endlessly, calling every name under the sun, threatening to steal every dollar I had, and caused me to repent everything. My father-in-law called me as well. He apologized to me for what his daughter had done. He was embarrassed of her, hoping this would teach her a lesson. He informed me they were done letting her get away with anything. I was more than glad to provide him with the doctor's reports he requested. That was a couple hours ago, and my wife keeps contacting me. I'm thinking about just blocking her. But somewhere in the back of my mind there is a niggling voice reminding me I might have gone too far and ought to have kept this between the two of us. Although I absolutely have second thoughts about the divorce and I don't regret shutting her out of my apartment, I realize what a major blow it is to her to be cut off from her parents. Am I the a-hole for telling my in-laws about my wife's adultery and abortion? Update 1. I want to thank everyone who helped me. Those of you who shared your own tales made me feel far less alone than I was feeling and also helped me relax about my response. Working through the divorce has not been simple. She is determined about receiving alimony and won't help me. We all know how complicated divorces can go. Thus, we have been trying to come to an understanding between us and avoid going to court. Unfortunately, it looks like she is handling this as an assault against her ego and does not give practicalities any thought. I am quite happy I had the wisdom to evict her from the apartment before she could get the pregnancy test and ultrasonic records, which I currently have with me. I have also discussed the overall matter with Darren. Though I am furious with him, he claims he will help and even testify if he has to. He has also blocked my wife on all conceivable platforms and avoided all interaction with her. He has apologized for what he did. Not that his apology counts to me, but at least he isn't repeating her error as she did. Curiosity drove me to ask him specifics about the affair. He claimed it began the weekend I visited Paris and persisted for as long as he remained here. Reportedly, they also met a few times after he moved out. Regarding her pregnancy or abortion, he claimed he knew nothing. Though I am furious with him, I do need him to respond appropriately should things get that far off. Knowing that he depends on my dad financially, his funds have gone out. I also realize the only reason he is suddenly so thoughtful of my needs is clearly my dad will be cut off completely should he exacerbate the problem in any form. According to my dad, Darren's lack of immediate cutoff is just a result of our maybe need for him should the divorce get messy. It hasn't been easy. I'm trying as hard as I can not let me snap at him. Apart from that, I have moved into my apartment. Otherwise, there is not any more positive news as yet. I cannot pretend to be sympathetic. I know exactly where she is. I am not likely to lose this flat as I have owned it for considerably longer than my marriage has lasted. For now, just that is all. I am preparing for the divorce to get more ugly. I have no other option. Once things calm down enough, I'll attempt to let you know, people. Update 2. I am formally divorcing you people. My last update was 6 months ago, hence I have been really busy. Things have advanced with the divorce since then. Originally challenging, my wife changed her behavior following multiple pretrial hearings, depositions, and settlement negotiations. It became evident that if we let this go to trial, it would only end badly for her. Darren answered under oath already. We had proof of her pregnancy. For her statement, we called in our OB/GYN. She supported us on everything, especially exposing where the depositions. My wife had to respond to some difficult questions under oath, and her behavior along with tail contradictions only worked against her. Darren's deposition validated our suspicions. Although his apologies meant nothing to me, it was an important piece of proof. On his phone, they also foolishly snapped some images in private situations during the encounter. She could not later on ignore the reality. We traveled to settlement conferences following the depositions. These were uncomfortable, but given her high-paying work and the strong proof of her infidelity, my wife's lawyers seemed to understand that pursuing alimony wouldn't be successful. Her request for alimony clearly wouldn't stand up in court. While we were ready to resolve things amicably, I wasn't going to be taken advantage of. My wife gave up at last. She committed herself to not claiming any alimony. Given her efforts during our marriage, the settlement also guaranteed that she would not get any more than what we decided upon. This was fair. I'm happy the last decision was taken without calling for a pointless trial that would have simply sapped my funds and time. She will have her own stuff. We have fairly split our shared assets. The settlement guarantees our ability to go on free from more entanglement. Though I am glad everything is over now, I cannot help but feel as though all of this has been a great waste of my time. Not only the divorce, but the entire marriage. I find it hard to believe I squandered time and effort and strayed from my intentions to start a family for someone who would not hesitate to toss it all aside for basically nothing. I appreciate your support and counsel all around. It has been really helpful at this difficult period. If someone else is experiencing something like this, keep strong and rely on your support system. Things will improve. Update 3. Although I'm not sure whether anyone is still interested, I wrote in this subreddit at the start of the year, and it has been a few months since my last update. I heard from my dad a few hours ago. Not expecting much, I picked up and was genuinely perplexed about how to respond when he told me Darren and my ex-wife apparently are seeing one another once more. I hadn't heard from any of them and didn't realize Darren came to the city after finding employment here. I suppose it was sufficient to reignite their love, and she apparently forgot all the slights she had aimed at him during the divorce. I get turned off. I feel duped in that someone made a fool of me. According to my dad, he has made it abundantly evident to Darren and my stepmother that he wants nothing to do with him going forward. At least having my old dad by my side feels great. Still, that is that. I don't think I will have any more updates for you folks, as I hope I won't hear anything about this anymore. Now on to the next story. Story 9. After my sister stole from me, my mother wanted to defend her by sending me to military school. This took place when I was 14 years old, approximately 1 year before my parents' divorce. My younger sister would always spend her allowance as if it were water, particularly on things like makeup, meals from the mall, video games, and clothing from Hot Topic. In spite of the fact that I was also given an allowance, my father made me earn it by cleaning the house and working in the yard. My mother never forced my sister to do any duties with the exception of cleaning her room, and my sister never did anything she didn't want to do unless her father was present to oversee her. In order to acquire additional funds, I mowed lawns, collected abandoned cans from various locations throughout the area in order to exchange them for a 5-cent deposit, and performed various other odd tasks across the neighborhood. I was putting money down at the time in order to get a scooter so that I could go around town. During the course of 2 years, I was able to save almost $2,000 by working a variety of odd jobs and putting away the majority of my allowance. The accumulation of that money, on the other hand, was not a simple task primarily because of my sister. Despite the fact that she was aware of all the small hiding places where I used to keep my money, she would steal from them. The following is a memorable passage that I have paraphrased from what I remember. Me: "Hey sis, did you take my money again?" Sister: "What is it?" No. When she was caught in the act of lying, she would stutter. Me: "You are a terrible liar. $100 is missing from my savings account." Sis: whining: "Leave me alone. I didn't do it." She begins to act as if she is crying and then rushes to her mother. Sis: "Mommy, bro is picking on me." Me: "She stole from my savings again." Mother, snapping her fingers: "Shut up. Is it not obvious that mama's little girl is feeling upset? That is all there is to it. She said that she did not do it, so it is safe to assume that she did not do it. In that case, I'll put you on the ground if you don't let this go." Me: "I know she did it, and if you don't get the money back, I'll get Dad's help." Mom: "There is no longer any requirement for that. Another thing is that you don't have any evidence that she stole your money." Me: "Yes, I do. Every single dollar that I add to it is recorded in a ledger that I keep. A total of X was reached 3 days ago. However, at this point, there is only Y. There is a missing $100, and you are aware that she has already stolen from my savings account on multiple occasions. That being said, I am aware that sis has already used up all of her stipend for this month, but you still went shopping yesterday. Exactly where did she obtain the money? Don't you think?" Following a brief moment of reflection, Mom scowls. Mom: "What do you know, mister? You are firmly planted. I am going to grab the belt if you do not go to your room." I had the ability to discuss the matter further. However, if there is one thing that I picked up from being in that environment, it was the knowledge of when to stop talking and simply call my father. Therefore, without uttering a single word to either of them, I made my way to my room and slammed the door shut. After that, I reached for my brick-like Nokia cell phone, which I had at the time, and dialed my father's number while he was at work. After he did not pick up the phone, I left a message in which I explained everything. He contacted me back about an hour later and assured me that he would take care of the situation. Not long after that, I heard the ringing of the landline phone in the house, and then I heard my mother yelling at my father as she was on the phone in the kitchen. It was difficult for me to listen from my room, and the only thing I managed to pick up on was my mother trying to excuse her behavior when she was in the wrong. However, that strategy was never successful, and she ended up saying something along the lines of, "Fine, in the event that she did in fact steal the money, you are obligated to repay it because she has already spent it." On the other hand, my mother yelled at me while she threw open my door. "Mother, you little snitch. I can't believe you blew the whistle on me. You couldn't just let a little money slip through your fingers after everything I do for you." Me: "So you admit that my sister took it then?" Mother, sneering: "You know what? It makes no difference to me. More money is required by girls than by boys. There is no reason why you shouldn't just hand it over to her." Simply said, "It wasn't even that much." Me: "It wasn't just a little money, and you ought to know that. In spite of the fact that she took $100, I would still want it back even if it was only $1. If someone stole from your purse, you would not want it to happen to you. The same thing would happen if my sister stole from me. She is guilty, as you are aware. One way or another, I want that money back. She did nothing while I put great effort into it." Mom: "My darling has no responsibilities. She is a princess and ought to be treated accordingly." Me: "That isn't what bothers me. She may go be a princess away from my possessions and away from me." Mom: "That's it, you little shit. I'm going to knock your ass." Me, standing up and staring her eye to eye, as I was already as tall as her at 14 and pretty strong from all the outdoor work I was doing. "Go ahead and try it. Since I did nothing wrong, I won't let you." My mother froze in position for a second, then let out a loud "Rhea," and swung her arm to try and knock something off my dresser. But she swung too low and struck the dresser itself, which I assumed truly hurt. She was giving me a terrible face as she grasped her hand to try and hold in the agony. Her teeth were snarling. She simply turned around then and left. When she didn't get her way, she went to her wine fridge and proceeded to get drunk. I heard her making a racket, yelling and smashing the wall as she went down the hall, down the stairs, into the kitchen, doing her regular routine. When she was denied her way, my sister was watching me from her bedroom door. She glanced at me scared and ran back inside her room, slamming the door. Mom was fast changing. She was harassing the whole for getting away with the horrors she did to me. My dad came home from work a few hours later and marched my sister into my room to see me. She admitted to pilfering from me, then informed me I was not grounded. Sis refused to even look at me the entire time. She was being ordered to apologize, and she did so in the most quiet and squeaky voice at first, until my dad regularly told her to speak up till she was almost screaming it. Dad then handed me $100 cash to cover what my sister stole and mentioned she was grounded for a week. The pilfered money would show up from her stipend. She began crying and called Dad horrible, then dashed to her room, ignoring all of us. My mother merely sat on the rear patio, intoxicated on her preferred wine. She never apologized to me and even behaved as though the whole incident never took place. My sister still received her next allowance as well, but at that time my mother gave it to her rather than my dad. On my dad's day off from work a few days later, we visited a nearby retailer where he purchased a combination safe to deposit my money and other little items in. We omitted telling my mother or sister I had it. It was set for a 4-digit code. To the best of memory, I used 4962 back then. After locking the safe and emptying all of my money into it, I stored it at the rear of my closet. A few weeks passed, and one day after returning from mowing some neighbors, I discovered my room had been rifled. To let her know what sis did to my room, I gave my mother a call. Mom, my baby didn't do this. Me, well then, did you? Mom, no. Me, well, it could only have been one of you. No one else was here, and this room was clean when I left. Mom, clearly upset at getting caught by reason. Fine, but if she did, then so what? You had it coming from not being kinder to her anyhow. She then turned to dash off. I phoned my dad once more and left another note explaining what transpired on his work answering machine. I then went to tell my sister I knew she was the one who tore apart my room. I said she couldn't get to my money anymore since I had locked it up in a safe. Before she could even try to respond to me, she then had an awful fit, and naturally, nasty Mama Bear came running to save her. My sister kept wailing in her room for the next 20 minutes while I reiterated that sis couldn't get at my money anymore and returned to clean her room. Only thrown and spread around. Nothing was truly missing or ruined. I gathered everything and restored it exactly how it was. Still, it was the most arrogant I had ever felt as I cleaned my room. The next day, though, I discovered it ripped once more, and this time my window was damaged too. Not able to get the safe open, sis had thrown it out the window. I immediately contacted my father, and when my parents returned from work, my sister came clean about having done it as if she were glad of herself, saying I shouldn't have received the safe in the first place. My mother tried to side with her, but my dad chewed her up and stated he got it for me since he was sick and tired of her stealing from me. My dad has to pay me back each time she pilfers money from me and spends it since my mother never would. My dad got me a lock for my door and even a combination key lock box with the key to my room next to the door. We had to replace the complete window from my room after shattering my window. My sister grounded herself for a month and spent that whole time pining in her room. Mom always let Dad go back to do what she wanted, like watching TV or playing video games whenever he was home till he left work. Knowing that my sister and mother would have gone out of their way to make me more miserable, I decided not to say anything. Once her month-long grounding ended, my sister started pestering me for money each time she spent all of her stipend. She never saved anything. Hence, I just pointed out to her that she would never pay it back. To be honest, I created an IOU to see whether she would really sign it before Dad. She ripped the paper in half later and went crying to Mom once more over my rudeness. Mom would try to make me cough up the money for her, but I would remind her what Dad would do. Thus, if my sister needed any more money, it wouldn't come from me. My mom then actively sought to send me to military school, but Dad objected. Also, for anyone wondering why my dad didn't simply assist me to create a savings account back then, I honestly don't know. Saving it in cash seems like the way we handled things. Update 1. I once made my mother walk straight into my door. My sister had thrown my safe through my bedroom window, so shortly after my dad provided me a safe for my money, he also got me a deadbolt lock for my door with a wall-mounted lockbox requiring a code to access the key. Together we installed the lock and lockbox while my sister and mother were not home. My sister came back and initially walked past my room. I watched her glance at the lock, then dashed to get Mom. Coming thundering down the stairs to meet my dad and me was both of them. What I recall is the following, paraphrased. Mom, pointing and snapping a few times. What the hell is that? Father, a door lock. Mom, I know what that thing is. Why is it in there? Dad, because you never see fit to reprimand or stop our daughter from taking from Kegel or ransacking his room. The lock stays. So going forward. Mom, this is my house and he is just 14. His door cannot have a lock. Dad, no, this is our house last I checked. Though I paid most of the expenses, including the mortgage, you seldom pay anything, and I'm tired of you giving our daughter such preference that Kegel suffers constantly. Mom, well then, I demand you tell me the code for the lockbox at least. Dad, deadpan staring. I'm not doing that because you've shown I can't trust you anymore. Mom then blasted her top and rushed down the steps. My sister merely stood there pouting and then made slow walk into her room. With the new lock, things were good. It became second nature to me to lock it each time I left my bedroom. Many times when I entered the code to obtain the key, I spotted my sister and mother staring at me, but I always made sure to conceal their line of sight using my hand or body. Though they hated that, there was nothing they could do about it. One day late in the month, my sister came begging me for $40 to get a video game she absolutely desired. Me, why do you keep asking for money when you and I both know you'll never pay it back? Sis, I swear I'll pay it back. Me, you won't. You know you would much prefer to spend all of your allowance than pay me back. You spend everything you have then some each month. That's what you do always. Sis, no, I do not. Me, well then, how about we test that? I asked. Always have a witness for contracts, folks. I then went into my room, acquired a piece of paper and a pen, handwrote an IOU contract stating Sis would pay me back the $40 upon receiving her monthly stipend, and Dad would co-sign the IOU. After reading the paper, Sis began sniffling. She ripped it in half and then ran screaming to Mom once more like she did every single time her way was denied. Mom, to Sis bowing, sobbing. Mom, what is it, darling? Small prince, what then did Kegel do? Me. I asked her to sign an IOU fronting Dad as she wanted to borrow money. She then started to. Mom, freckled. And why would you pursue that? She merely sought a small loan. Me. Would you sign the IOU also to make sure she pays the money back? Mom, yelling. You little shit. I am not required to sign anything. Now only loan her the money. Me. Not without a signed IOU. Mom stood up, arm out as if about to strike me, then pulled back. Mom, you have to have a paper trail for everything. You're just like your father. Me. I'd say it's a good thing I'm just like Dad because it's far better than being just like Sis is because you never do anything good. Me beginning to stroll up the stairs to my room at this point. Mom, what was that, you little shit? Just as I entered my bedroom and locked the door, she started hurrying up the stairs. Back then, my mother used to yell by throwing open my bedroom door. She opened it in one sweeping stroke, lunging her body forward. But at this point, I had only had the lock on my door for a brief while, so she wasn't used to it yet. She tried to throw open my door and smashed rather loudly directly into the deadbolt after I shut it. Then I heard her slump to the ground and begin to produce agonizing cries. She had very hard banged her body and face against the door. Her lip was plump, and her forehead developed a bump from this old-fashioned solid wood door. She was spread out on the floor, pounding her fist. When I opened the door, Mom exclaimed, "You did this to me, you little shit." Me. You did it to yourself, Mom. You are anchored. Get away from my sight. I then called Dad, and he simply grumbled over the phone over the entire matter. He stated I wasn't grounded, but I was still in huge trouble for goading her and to let him handle her when he got home. That was about it. Dad gave me a harsh lecture at the end, coupled with extra housework and a cut in my stipend that month. Every time Sis begged for money following that day, I asked her to sign an IOU. She truly did object to that. Update 2. It blew up in her face when my mother tried to have me sent to military school and produced my dad's signature. When I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more cautious that if she tried to harm me, it would end very poorly for her. The final time, she mainly yelled at me. She never laid a finger on me ever more until years later when she wanted my house. I gave it no thought and carried on with my regular schedule of classes and odd work. Right around my 15th birthday, my dad gave me an engine kit for my bike. To get around town, I would be better off saving for a car than a scooter, he advised, and this would help. Now I stayed saving for a car and finally agreed with his reasoning. A few days later, though, I came over a military academy leaflet while clearing grass off the rear patio after mowing the yard. It was on the floor under a chair close to where my mother preferred to sit and sip wine. I waited until my dad arrived home to show him what I had discovered. I felt she was planning some sort of mad scheme. He went to see my mom with the booklet and asked her about it since he was somewhat irate but didn't jump to judgments. Dad, honey, what's this? Mom becomes white upon seeing the leaflet. Nothing. I had never seen it before. Dad, exactly. You know I wouldn't let you send Kegel to military school if you intended to try to send him. Mom broke her front at that and exclaimed, he has to learn some discipline. He locks his door often. Hence I am unable to even spank him anymore as he is too big. This is the only means I have left to chastise him for being a disobedient brat. Dad, Kegel stood up to you for your silly favoritism and did nothing wrong. Given you in the way you treat her and let her get away with stealing from her brother, our daughter is the brat, if anything. And as far as I'm concerned, this conversation about sending Kegel to military school is closed. Should you try to send him? Then help me. I will bring the hammer down on you whatever method I can. Mom. Well, I guess this entire family is just going to take away what little power I have left in this house then. Should I have nothing, I could as well be nothing. Dad. You and I both know you would much choose Kegel over being nothing. Cut back on your theatrical behavior now. A guy with his own money, Kegel is growing up. Mom left the room angrily then. Before school the next morning, I watched her desperately attempting to fit something into the kitchen garbage can. I dug out what she was trying to hide while waiting for her to head out for work. She filled out the military school application totally in her hand. On it, both parents or legal guardians had to sign the paper. Included 2 signatures. I understood Mom's, but the other seemed to be a poor attempt to copy Dad's. His sleek and sophisticated signature was something he took great satisfaction in. There is no way my mother could replicate it without seeming like fraud. She probably understood it once she was confronted and gave up attempting to send me away. Later, I showed my dad the papers and kept them. Though he was furious, he let it go, knowing she had done it already. Still, he filed the paperwork right in case. A few more months later, word leaked out that my mother was seeing an old high school ex-boyfriend. My dad filed for divorce. That was his last straw. Months later, after he acquired another house, I moved in with him. Pulling out the military school records my mom had created with his signature, he accelerated the divorce rather fast, and it wasn't only that. He also had evidence she created his signature on at least 1 credit card application and one other thing I don't remember, which made Mom worry about being arrested for fraud. She agreed to most of his requirements, so they proceeded really quickly through court. Dad didn't want the house, so Mom bought it. Nevertheless, she also insisted on alimony and child support since my sister predictably decided to remain living with her. For a decade of monthly payments, the judge granted my mother child support and a minimal alimony award. Alimony essentially paid my sister's allowance anyhow. Mom was really irate about that and vowed to bring him back to court, but for years he held the falsified signatures over her head to calm her. My sister threw out her mouth at me and smugly claimed Mom informed her she was a princess and the more deserved sibling. So explaining the reason I was leaving the house. Not caring anymore, I merely shook my head and advised her to consider what she wants. Then I went out the door, at last as free as a bird. My connection with my sister, who paid once weekly visits to Dad's residence, deteriorated until at last we stopped communicating completely for years. Mom's residence hardly appealed to me. She essentially turned my former room into a home office anyway. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Pregnant wife cheated on me with her affair partner. So I just waited until our anniversary, so I could expose her in front of everyone. Also, the baby wasn't even mine. I was married to my ex-wife for almost 3 years, but we had to go our separate ways due to her infidelity. My ex-wife and I grew up in the same town, so we weren't complete strangers when we started dating. We even went to the same high school, but I was a couple of classes ahead of her, and we didn't get close to each other until after college. From the beginning, I didn't want to leave our town for greener pastures or anything. I loved it there and always wanted to be close to the people who mattered. The same applied to my ex-wife. She returned to overlook her parents' restaurant after she graduated from college, and that's when our relationship started. We became perfect friends after she returned, and some months after we got to know each other better, we started dating. Since we all lived in a small town, everyone knew we were in a relationship and possibly would end up marrying each other, and that's precisely what happened. After a year and 7 months of being in a relationship, we got married and had a beautiful wedding. I worked as a carpenter and earned a decent amount of money monthly, so I gave my ex-wife the kind of wedding she wanted. It wasn't so big, but it was what she wanted, and everything turned out as planned. After we got married, we went on our honeymoon, but just 2 days after we left, we had to return because her mother passed away in her sleep. It was a very tough season for both of us, and the first year of our marriage was filled with mourning. She was an only child, and I imagine how terrible she must have felt to lose her mother like that. Meanwhile, I supported her in any way I could. I grieved with her, cared for her, and was there for her at all times. It wasn't how I wanted us to start our marital journey, but since death was something no one could predict or stop, I could do nothing. My ex-wife started coming out of her shell in the second year of our marriage. Because of her loss, she had become a shadow of herself and lost interest in many things. When this happened, I was so glad and looked forward to having the kind of marriage I always imagined. The first year had been very tough for me, and I loved her so much and didn't want to break our vows. I expected that our relationship/marriage would be fixed after she got over her mother's death, but that didn't happen. I felt like she was cold to me, and even if we got intimate, I didn't feel the spark we used to have while we were dating. Most times, it felt like I was forcing myself on her, and it kept getting worse that I had to do some research online. With my research, I learned a lot of things and understood why she acted that way. I knew I had to give her time, and it felt like we were drifting apart the more time I gave her. I didn't enjoy the first 2 years of my marriage, but I had to stay because I expected her to snap out of that state and change. One time I even confronted her about her change in character and how I wasn't enjoying our marriage, but she called me selfish and insensitive. The very annoying part was that if we went out to a wedding, gathering, or whatever event we were attending, she would be very active, laugh at funny and dry jokes, and interact with people like everything was cool with her. But as soon as we got home, she would change. Our marriage was getting very boring, and after constantly nagging about her attitude for weeks, I started to see a few changes. She became more active at home, spent time with me, and we started doing all the fun things we used to do as singles but never had the opportunity to do in our marriage because of the tragedy that struck. Sincerely, her changes made me feel loved, and throughout that time our marriage was shaky and she was grieving. I never tried to play smart with or look at any woman in a way I shouldn't have. I'll admit there were temptations, especially since I wasn't getting what I wanted and our conversations were so boring. But I loved her so much, and I knew what a 5-minute mistake could do to our marriage. Our home was filled with happiness and laughter for the following months, and I enjoyed her company so much. The icing on the cake was when we found out she was pregnant, and I was so excited. I would become a father. It meant so much to me. Overall, I was glad I was finally having the marriage of my dreams. About 6 months after my ex-wife found out she was pregnant, I decided to make things up to her. I knew the news of her mother's death had ruined our honeymoon, and even though she never mentioned it, I knew she would love to return to the same place. It was expensive, but I started saving for it 2 months after things returned to normal. After all the bookings and preparations were made, I broke the news to her, and we didn't just take it as our honeymoon but as a romantic getaway, and she really loved it. Because our wedding anniversary was only a week after we'd returned from the getaway, we planned on renewing our vows in front of friends and family. The renewal of vows was my idea, and I thought it was necessary because we were only beginning to enjoy our marriage. Eventually, we went on our second honeymoon getaway and had so much fun together. We visited places, took multiple pictures, and most importantly, tried different foods. We were only meant to spend a week there, and on our 6th day there, I made a shocking discovery. I can't really recall what took me to my ex-wife's phone. I think she was gisting me about the news that went viral on Facebook, and since I wasn't on Facebook then, she gave her phone to me so I could read it. Then she went into the bathroom to shower, and because I wasn't very interested in the news, I pressed the return key and it opened her text messages. I know I shouldn't have read her messages, but I couldn't resist the temptation. It was my first time doing so. There was a name saved as My Happiness in Spanish, and it piqued my curiosity, so I opened the message, and to my greatest surprise, it was our former wedding planner. There were also a lot of pictures shared between them. Nudes, pictures of them together in bed, and photos of them kissing each other. Another thing was, they had been dating each other for 2 years under my nose, and a month after our wedding anniversary was their second anniversary. At that point, I felt the room spin, and my chest almost exploded from being too tight. I would really love to explain how I felt, but no amount of words can describe it. I'm still somewhat surprised that I was smart enough to forward all their messages to my number in that state of shock and delete all that I sent to my phone so she wouldn't know. Honestly, the rest of our romantic getaway was ruined, and there was a change in my attitude too. I was so worried that the child she was carrying wasn't mine, and for nights I did not sleep well or think straight. I even missed working on most of my clients' projects because I was not in the right mind. Meanwhile, I kept everything in and did not confront her about anything. She was so engrossed with our small renewal of vows party that she thought I was having mood swings again. So, on our anniversary, we did our thing, and I was patient enough for our vows to be renewed. They didn't mean anything to me anymore, and after we were done, I asked that the gifts I got for her be brought in so she could open them in front of everyone. Anyone who saw the size of the gifts could tell they were framed pictures, but maybe she thought they were pictures from our second honeymoon. I asked for the photos to be given to her so she could open it herself, and she did. Immediately she opened it. Everyone gasped and she froze. I asked her to open the second one, and she reluctantly opened it with tears in her eyes. Then I opened the last one myself. All 3 pictures were of her and our former wedding planner in bed, naked together, and a picture of them kissing each other. Funnily enough, he was in attendance, and his wife and children were there too. Since we were close in some way, I felt so satisfied to expose my ex-wife and embarrass her in front of everyone. Then I told her it was over between us and I wanted nothing to do with the child she was carrying because it was obviously not mine. She cried, begged me, and even said she didn't know how she entered an affair with him, but she was drawn to him because he comforted her more and didn't fake his grieving like I did. I was shocked to hear her say that because I sacrificed so much in her grief to be with her. It hurt, and it was more reason to get her out of my life. We divorced shortly after, and the whole town carried the news. The wedding planner's wife was so mad too that she divorced him. And in addition, he was forced to retire after the word spread like wildfire. I never took responsibility for the pregnancy, and the wedding planner said it wasn't his until DNA proved it was. It still hurts me whenever I remember what I got in return for being patient with my ex-wife and loving her foolishly. I haven't healed yet, and the wound opens each time I see her or bump into her. It's also been 4 years, and I haven't been in another relationship since then. I don't know if I will, but I'm sure I can never love another woman the way I loved my ex-wife. That part of me is gone. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.